There comes a moment in life when the noise feels unbearable. You wake up tired, not because the body has failed you, but because the mind never stopped racing. Stress has become the air we breathe. Money feels like a chain around our necks. Relationships often bring more confusion than comfort, and anxiety sits in the background like a shadow that refuses to leave. We chase happiness as if it were a prize waiting just one step beyond the horizon. And yet, the more we run, the emptier we feel. In this endless cycle, the heart whispers a simple question. Is there another way to live? The answer is yes. There is a way, not hidden in distant temples or abstract theories, but alive within the very breath you are taking right now. The teachings of the Buddha, preserved for over 2,500 years, offer not escape, but a return to the clarity, compassion, and strength that already rest inside you. These teachings do not ask you to abandon your family, your career, or your daily life. They invite you to walk through life differently, with more presence, less struggle, and a deeper sense of belonging to yourself and the world around you. This journey is not about becoming someone new, but about remembering who you truly are when the noise quiets. Across the chapters to come, we will walk step by step through the common struggles of modern life. Each struggle will be named honestly: the weight of stress, the endless hunger for money, the pain of broken relationships, the grip of anxiety, the feeling of being never enough. And with each pain, a door will be opened, revealing how ancient Buddhist wisdom, mindfulness, compassion, the letting go of clinging can transform suffering into freedom. Imagine for a moment that your life is like a river. Right now, many of us are thrashing in the current, gasping for air, fighting the water itself. The teachings here will not drain the river, nor stop its flow. Instead, they will show you how to float, how to let the water carry you, how to trust the movement instead of fearing it. Slowly, struggle gives way to peace. You begin to see that happiness is not at the finish line, but hidden in the pauses, in the breaths, in the simple act of being here now. This is not a promise of perfection. Life will still bring challenges, losses, and storms. But with a steady mind and a compassionate heart, you will no longer be shattered by them. Instead, you will meet them with courage, clarity, and a deep sense of enoughness. This is the gift of the Dharma, the timeless invitation to wake up, to live fully, and to discover that the freedom you seek has been waiting inside you all along. And so, as we begin, let us take a breath together. Let us pause the race, set aside the noise, and step gently into this path. Ahead lies not theory, but practice, not distant ideals, but living truths, each chapter guiding you closer to peace. The journey starts here with you. No doubt there is a quiet war happening inside the modern heart. It does not roar like cannons or thunder like storms, but it weighs heavily with each morning we rise. It is the war of stress, of pressure, of being pulled in 10 different directions at once. For many people, life today feels like an endless race. Alarms ring before dawn, inboxes overflow, bills pile up, and bodies rush from one obligation to the next. We convince ourselves that if we can just finish one more task, check one more box, or reach one more goal, and finally we can breathe. But the breath never comes. The to-do list never ends. Instead, we lie awake long after midnight, staring at the ceiling, carrying a body that is exhausted and a mind that will not rest. Stress has become so normal that we call it life. The truth is, stress is not simply about work. It seeps into every corner of existence. A parent comes home tired, carrying the weight of deadlines, and the child feels the absence of presence. A young student scrolls through glowing screens filled with perfect lives and feels the tightness of never being enough. Couples argue not because of deep hatred, but because the pressure of survival builds walls of impatience. Even in moments of silence, stress lingers like a ghost. It whispers, You are falling behind. You are not safe. You are not doing enough. And when this whisper grows into a roar, it becomes illness, anxiety, and despair. Why does this happen? Why, in a world more advanced than any before, do so many feel crushed by stress? Part of the answer lies in the way we measure worth. From an early age, many are taught that life is a ladder. Climb higher, move faster, never stop. Achievements equal approval. Approval equals love. And so the heart becomes a machine, running endlessly for validation. But machines break. And when humans live like machines, something sacred begins to fracture. The smile becomes forced. The body aches. The spirit grows weary. We tell ourselves that this is normal, but deep inside, we know something has gone terribly wrong. Stress feeds on comparison and control. We compare ourselves to others' colleagues, neighbors, strangers on the internet, and the more we compare, the smaller we feel. We try to control every outcome, to predict every future, to shape every detail. But control is a fragile illusion. The more tightly we hold, the more life slips through our fingers. Imagine clenching sand in your hand. The harder you squeeze, the faster it falls. Stress is born not from the sand itself, but from the grip. And yet, we rarely question the grip. We assume it is natural to cling. We assume there is no other way. But there is another way. This is where the ancient wisdom of the Buddha begins to shine, like a lamp in a dark room. Over 2,500 years ago, people faced the same human struggles: fear of failure, pressure to succeed, worry for the future. The language of their world was different, but the pain was the same. And the Buddhist teaching was simple yet revolutionary. Suffering is real, but it is not permanent. Stress arises not from life itself, but from the way we relate to life. And if stress is created by the mind, then peace can also be created by the mind. One of the most powerful teachings for stress is mindfulness. Not mindfulness as a trend or productivity hack, but mindfulness as a way of being. To be mindful is to return again and again to the present moment. It is to pause the endless chase and simply notice the breath entering and leaving, the way the body feels in this chair, the sound of a bird outside the window. This noticing may sound too simple for a world that celebrates complexity, but simplicity is exactly the medicine the stressed heart needs. When you are mindful, you are not lost in tomorrow's worries or yesterday's regrets. You are here in the only moment that truly exists. And in this moment, you discover that much of what you feared is not actually happening. Stress shrinks when the mind stops wandering and learns to rest. Mindfulness is not escape. It does not erase your responsibilities or remove your challenges, but it changes the way you carry them. Imagine a person holding a heavy bucket of water with stiff, rigid arms. The weight feels unbearable. Now imagine the same person learning to balance the bucket gently, holding it with care instead of force. The water is the same, but the burden is different. This is the gift of mindfulness. Life does not suddenly become weightless, but it becomes livable. Stress becomes less of an enemy and more of a teacher, guiding you back to the ground beneath your feet. Another teaching that speaks directly to stress is the practice of letting go. In Buddhist wisdom, clinging is the root of much suffering. We cling to identities, outcomes, possessions, expectations. And each attachment becomes another rope pulling us in 100 directions. The more ropes, the more strain. Letting go does not mean giving up on life. It means loosening the grip, allowing space for life to move naturally. Imagine standing in a river. If you fight the current, you will drown. If you learn to float, the river will carry you. Stress is the fight. Peace is the float. Letting go is learning to float. Letting go also means releasing the obsession with perfection. Many people live with the constant voice saying, "You must do more. You must be better. You must not fail." This voice is relentless, and it fuels endless stress. But perfection is an illusion. The Buddha taught that everything is impermanent. Everything changes, nothing is flawless. When you accept imperfection, you stop fighting reality. You begin to see beauty in the cracks, wisdom in the mistakes, and freedom in the unfinished. Stress begins to dissolve when you no longer demand that life be something it cannot be. Compassion is another antidote. Stress often grows because we treat ourselves with harshness. We demand, criticize, and punish ourselves in ways we would never treat a friend. But compassion softens this war. Compassion says, "It is enough. You are enough. May you be safe. May you be at ease." Compassion turns the inner battlefield into a sanctuary. And when the heart rests in compassion, stress loses its power. You may still face challenges, but you face them with a softer strength. Asterisk in daily practice. These teachings become small but powerful habits. Taking one conscious breath before opening the laptop. Pausing for a moment of silence in the car before rushing into the house. Whispering a kind phrase to yourself when the pressure feels too heavy. These practices do not remove stress entirely. They teach you how to meet stress without collapsing under it. They remind you that you are not the storm. You are the sky that holds it. And slowly, something changes. The racing thoughts begin to slow. The shoulders soften. The nights bring deeper sleep. The mornings carry less dread. You begin to notice joy in small places. The warmth of sunlight, the sound of laughter, the taste of morning coffee. Life is no longer an endless chase, but a series of living moments. Stress still arrives, but it no longer controls you. You have discovered a different rhythm, one that feels more human, more natural, more free. And as you walk this path, a new question begins to rise. If stress can be softened through presence, what about the other chains we carry? What about the endless hunger for money, the belief that more wealth equals more worth? If the grip of stress can loosen, can the grip of greed loosen too? This is where the next part of our journey will lead, into the tangled world of money and desire, and the Buddhist wisdom that shows us how to find enough. Stress has a way of disguising itself. Sometimes it shouts with racing thoughts, pounding hearts, and restless nights. But often it hides quietly, shaping our choices, our tone of voice, and even the way we walk. Think about the last time you snapped at someone you loved, not because of what they said, but because of everything else pressing on your mind. Think about the times you avoided people, not because you wanted distance, but because you felt too tired, too stretched, too fragile to connect. Stress is not just a personal burden. It spills outward, touching every relationship and every space we enter. It changes the way we see ourselves, and it shapes the story we tell about life. Many people believe stress is a sign of strength, proof that we are working hard and taking life seriously. But in truth, stress is often a signal that something inside is out of balance. Imagine a violin string. If the string is too loose, no music can be played. If the string is too tight, it will snap. The art of life is finding that middle way, the balance, where we can play the music without breaking. The Buddha called this the middle path, a way of living that avoids extremes. Stress thrives in extremes. Working too much, resting too little, chasing too hard, ignoring too deeply. Peace lives in balance. One story from the Buddha's life illustrates this clearly. Before his enlightenment, he practiced severe austerities, starving his body, denying himself rest, punishing himself in pursuit of truth. But his body grew weak, his mind clouded, and his spirit nearly broke. Then one day, he heard a musician tuning a stringed instrument. If the string was too tight, it snapped. If too loose, it made no sound. And in that simple moment, he realized, truth is found not in punishment or indulgence, but in balance. From that day forward, he walked the middle path and in time, found awakening. This wisdom speaks directly to the modern heart. Today, many of us live as if the string is too tight. We push ourselves harder, work longer, and refuse to rest, believing that only through constant strain will we succeed. But the truth is, no music comes from a snapped string. Stress breaks us when we live beyond our balance. Balance does not mean laziness. It means knowing when to move and when to rest, when to act and when to pause. It means respecting the rhythm of life rather than fighting against it. That another layer of stress lies in our fear of uncertainty. We want life to be predictable, safe, under control. We plan carefully, we prepare endlessly, and yet life remains unpredictable. Illness arrives without warning. Jobs disappear. Relationships change. The future rarely unfolds as we imagined. And so we live in a constant state of tension, trying to outthink what cannot be outhought. But Buddhist wisdom teaches impermanence, not as a threat, but as a truth that frees us. When we accept that change is inevitable, we stop exhausting ourselves trying to resist it. The seasons turn. The tides shift. The heart beats and then rests. Everything changes, and that is what allows life to flow. Stress weakens when we stop fighting impermanence and start moving with it. Mindfulness and compassion are the tools that help us do this. Imagine holding a cup of hot tea in your hands. If you grip too tightly, you burn yourself. If you ignore it, it spills. But if you hold it with gentle awareness, you enjoy the warmth. Life is the same. Stress comes when we grip or ignore. Peace comes when we hold with gentle care. Let us bring this teaching into a simple practice. Close your eyes if you wish and take one slow breath in. Feel the air filling your lungs. Hold it gently. And now release, letting the body soften. Take another breath, slower this time, noticing the rise and fall of the chest. With each breath, whisper silently, I am here. This is enough. This simple act is not trivial. It is a doorway. Each mindful breath interrupts the cycle of stress. Each compassionate word dissolves the harsh voice inside. And over time, these small acts reshape the way we live. There is also wisdom in community. Stress often feels heavier because we carry it alone. We believe we must be strong, independent, self-sufficient. But the Buddha's path always emphasized Sangha, the community of those who walk together. Stress shrinks when we speak honestly, when we share our burdens, when we sit in silence with others who understand. You are not weak for needing support. You are human. And in shared humanity, there is relief. In the end, the antidote to stress is not to eliminate every problem. That is impossible. The antidote is to change our relationship with life itself. Stress says, life must go my way. Peace says, I can walk with life as it is. Stress demands certainty. Peace welcomes change. Stress clings tightly. Peace lets go gently. And this shift is available to anyone, no matter where they are, no matter what they face. Picture yourself standing at a busy intersection in a noisy city. Cars honk, lights flash, people rush in every direction. Stress is like trying to control all the cars at once. But peace is like stepping onto the sidewalk, letting the traffic flow, knowing you are not the driver of the world. You are simply a traveler, breathing, walking, being. This image is the essence of Buddhist wisdom applied to stress. You do not have to control the world to find calm. You only need to learn how to rest within it. As stress softens, something unexpected happens. The heart begins to notice another chain, one that often hides behind stress, but drives it with equal power. The relentless pursuit of more. More success, more wealth, more possessions, more recognition. Stress often grows not only because of pressure, but because of desire. The desire for money and status whispers that we are not enough until we have more. And so we chase, and the chase becomes another form of suffering. This is where the next chapter leads us. If stress is the tight string, money is often the hand that keeps pulling it tighter. Many believe that money will finally release the pressure, but for countless people, it only creates new chains. The Buddha spoke of desire as a fire that never satisfies. The more you feed it, the larger it grows. And so the question arises, how can we live in a world that requires money without being consumed by the endless hunger for it? How can we transform desire into freedom and discover the art of enough? The journey continues there into the struggle of money and craving, and the surprising freedom that opens when we loosen its grip. Money. The very word can stir a rush of feelings: hope, fear, excitement, shame. For many, money is not simply paper or numbers on a screen. It is security, identity, and even self-worth. We wake each morning and step into the chase. Bills demand to be paid, children need food, dreams require resources. And beneath all of this is a cultural drumbeat repeating over and over: more is better, more is safer, more is proof that you matter. Yet the paradox of money is clear. No matter how much is earned, the hunger rarely fades. Someone makes their first $1,000 and feels proud, but soon they want 10,000. The 10 grows into 100, the 100 into 1 million. And even those who reach the peak of wealth still lie awake at night fearing loss, fearing theft, fearing that what was built could vanish in a moment. Money promises freedom, but often it delivers chains. Why is this? Why does something so practical, so necessary, become such a source of suffering? The Buddha called it tanha, craving. Craving is not just desire. Desire itself is natural. The desire to eat, to drink, to rest, to create. Craving is desire distorted. It is the endless more that burns like fire and never feels full. The more we feed it, the more it grows. And in the modern world, money is one of craving's sharpest flames. Asterisk, think about the way advertising works. Commercials rarely sell you the object itself. They sell you the feeling. A luxury car is not presented as metal and wheels. It is shown as status, admiration, respect. A new phone is not sold as plastic and glass. It is shown as belonging, connection, popularity. Money and possessions are tied to identity, to worth, to love. And when this link becomes strong, suffering follows. Because identity can never be filled from the outside. Many people believe they will finally be at peace when they have enough. But what is enough? Enough shifts like the horizon. Just when you think you are close, it moves further away. A person making $40,000 believes peace will come at 80,000. The one making 80 believes it will come at 200. The one making 200 dreams of 1 million. And on it goes endlessly. Enough is not a number. Enough is a state of heart. The Buddha told a story about a wealthy man who owned vast lands and countless treasures. Yet he was never satisfied. He worried constantly about thieves, competitors, and the decline of his fortune. One day, he met a monk who owned only a single bowl and a robe. The monk slept soundly each night, ate with gratitude each day, and smiled with ease. The rich man, puzzled, asked, "Why are you so at peace when you have nothing, and I am so restless when I have everything?" The monk replied, "Because you cling to your possessions as if they are you. I use my bowl, but I do not cling to it. When you stop clinging, you discover peace." This story is not against wealth. Money itself is neutral. It can feed the hungry, build schools, support families. But when money becomes fused with self-worth, it becomes a cage. The problem is not money, it is the meaning we attach to it. When we believe money equals value, we live in constant fear of not having enough. But when we see money simply as a tool, its grip weakens. Ask yourself honestly, how many times have you sacrificed peace for the promise of more? How many birthdays, dinners, or simple sunsets were missed because the chase for money felt more urgent? How many nights were spent worrying about numbers in an account while life itself was quietly waiting outside the window? This is the silent cost of craving. It steals the present moment. Buddhist practice offers a radical shift. Instead of chasing endlessly, it invites us to examine craving itself. Notice what happens in the body when you crave something, maybe a new car, a promotion, a bigger house. There is a tightness, a restlessness, an itch that will not be quiet until you get it. And when you finally do, the satisfaction is brief. Soon, another craving appears. But if you pause and simply observe the craving, something surprising happens. The craving rises, peaks, and then fades. You realize you do not have to obey it. You are not the craving. You are the awareness watching it. This realization is liberating. It shows that craving is like a wave. If you chase the wave, you exhaust yourself. If you fight the wave, you drown. But if you stand still and watch, the wave passes. Money's pull works the same way. The craving for more feels urgent, but if you meet it with mindfulness, it loosens. Generosity is another practice that heals the grip of money. When you give, even a small amount, you send a message to your heart. I have enough to share. This shifts the story from scarcity to abundance. Generosity is not measured by the size of the gift, but by the freedom in which it is given. A person who gives $1 with joy can feel wealthier than a millionaire who hoards in fear. The Buddha often said that the act of giving benefits the giver as much as the receiver. Because in giving, you loosen the chains of clinging. Now imagine a hand clenched tightly around a coin. The tighter the grip, the more painful it becomes. But when the hand opens to give, not only does the coin flow out, but the tension in the hand disappears. This is the secret of generosity. It softens the heart. It lightens the burden. It reminds us that our value is not measured by what we hold, but by what we share. This teaching does not mean abandoning responsibility. Families must be cared for, debts must be honored, and daily life requires money. But it means shifting the relationship. Instead of seeing money as identity, see it as energy, flowing in and out. Sometimes you have more, sometimes less, but you are always whole. Money may rise and fall, but your worth does not. And here lies the deeper truth. Craving for money is never about money. It is about the longing to feel safe, to feel loved, to feel worthy. But these needs cannot be purchased. Safety comes from inner balance. Love comes from compassion. Worth comes from knowing your true nature. When you rest in these, money returns to its rightful place, a helpful tool, no longer a merciless master. And so the practice becomes simple. Live with mindfulness. Notice when craving stirs. Breathe into it. Question it. Do you really need this? Or is it the old hunger speaking? Practice generosity, even in small ways. Share time, attention, or resources. And whisper to yourself daily, I am enough. This is enough. Over time, the fire of craving cools, and in its place arises a steady warmth, a peace that money cannot buy. But this journey does not end with money. Beyond the pressure of stress and the hunger of craving lies another source of pain, the complexity of human relationships. Love, friendship, family, these bring joy but also heartbreak, misunderstanding, and loneliness. How do we carry the teachings of balance, mindfulness, and compassion into the realm of love and connection? That is where we now turn, to discover how Buddhist wisdom can guide the heart through the tangled web of relationships. The chase for money is not only personal, it is woven into the fabric of society. From childhood, many are taught to measure success in dollars and possessions. Schools reward the highest achievers, companies reward the most productive, and culture praises those who make it big. We internalize this message. Our worth is tied to our wealth. And so, comparison becomes constant. A neighbor buys a new car, and suddenly your old one feels inadequate. A friend posts pictures of a vacation, and suddenly your own life feels small. Social media magnifies this comparison, showing curated images of luxury and ease, while hiding the quiet struggles behind them. Craving grows not from need, but from comparison, and comparison is endless. Buddhist wisdom reminds us, envy is a thief of peace. When we measure our lives against others, we forget that each path is unique, shaped by different causes and conditions. The Buddha taught dependent origination. Everything arises from many factors. Your life, your circumstances, your journey, they are not identical to anyone else's. Comparison ignores this truth. It takes a fragment of another's story and uses it as a weapon against your own. The antidote is gratitude. Gratitude shifts the focus from what is missing to what is already present. It softens the restless hunger for more and allows the heart to rest. Try this simple practice. At the end of each day, name 3 things you are grateful for. They do not need to be grand. A warm meal, a kind word, a safe place to sleep. Gratitude rewires the mind, teaching it to notice sufficiency instead of lack. Over time, this practice transforms your relationship with money. You begin to see that wealth is not measured in possessions, but in presence. The richest person is not the one with the most, but the one who feels complete with what they have. Still, some may wonder, if I stop striving for more, won't I fall behind? Won't I lose opportunities? The Buddha's middle way answers this fear. He never encouraged laziness or neglect. Effort is important. Work is necessary, but the quality of effort matters. There is effort fueled by desperation, which drains the body and poisons the mind. And there is effort fueled by clarity, which is steady, sustainable, and free from obsession. The middle way is not about abandoning ambition, but about holding it lightly, knowing that true worth is not dependent on its outcome. Consider the farmer who plants seeds. He waters them, cares for them, protects them, but he does not scream at the soil to grow faster. He does not panic each day, digging up the seeds to see if they are sprouting. He does his part and allows nature to do the rest. In the same way, we are called to work with sincerity and diligence, but without the constant panic of craving. Results will come in their time. Stress is born from trying to control the harvest. Peace is born from trusting the process. Another teaching that eases the grip of money is impermanence. Everything changes. Fortunes rise and fall. Markets grow and collapse. A job today may vanish tomorrow. This truth may seem frightening, but it also brings freedom. When you accept impermanence, you stop clinging so tightly. You see that money, like all things, flows. And because it flows, it is never truly yours to control. You become less afraid of loss because you understand that loss is natural. You become less obsessed with gain because gain is temporary. Impermanence teaches us to live in balance, appreciating what we have without being enslaved by it. Generosity deepens this lesson. In many Buddhist traditions, monks and nuns live entirely on offerings. Each morning they walk with bowls, receiving food from the community. This practice is not about begging. It is about interdependence. The community supports the monks, and the monks offer teachings and presents in return. Both giver and receiver are enriched. When we give, we participate in this same cycle of interdependence. We acknowledge that nothing we hold is truly separate from others. Money becomes not a fortress, but a bridge. Think of the joy you feel when giving a meaningful gift. The smile on the receiver's face, the warmth in your chest. These moments reveal the truth. Generosity nourishes both sides. The heart expands when it shares. Craving contracts it when it clings. Over time, practicing generosity builds trust and sufficiency. You learn that even when you give, you are not diminished. You are replenished by the act itself. This transformation can feel radical in a culture of accumulation. But the freedom it brings is profound. Imagine walking into a room filled with treasures. Most people enter with fear. What if I lose these? What if someone takes them? But if you learn to let go, you can enter the same room with peace. These are beautiful, but they are not me. They may come and go, but I remain whole. That is the heart of the teaching. Money is not identity. It is not safety. It is not love. It is a tool. Use it with wisdom, and it serves you. Cling to it, and it enslaves you. As this perspective grows, something unexpected happens. Relationships with others change. When money is seen as identity, relationships often become transactional. People are valued for what they provide, not for who they are. Friendships dissolve in jealousy. Families fracture over inheritance. Couples argue endlessly over finances, forgetting the love that first brought them together. The hunger for money corrodes trust and connection. But when money is placed back in its rightful place as a tool, not a master, relationships begin to heal. You start to see people as people, not as comparisons or competitors. You begin to value time, presence, and kindness more than possessions. And this leads us naturally into the next realm of suffering and healing: human relationships. Money may promise comfort, but love promises meaning. Yet love too often brings conflict, heartbreak, and confusion. How do we bring the same mindfulness, balance, and compassion into the messy, beautiful, complicated world of relationships? How do we learn to love without clinging, to care without control, to connect without fear? These are the questions we will explore in the next chapter, where the Buddha's wisdom offers not just inner peace, but guidance for the shared journey of the human heart. Relationships are the fabric of human life. From the moment we are born, we are held, fed, and cared for by others. We learn to walk, speak, and dream in the company of family, friends, teachers, and companions. Love, in all its forms, gives life meaning. Yet love also brings some of the deepest wounds. For every smile, there are tears. For every bond, there is the risk of heartbreak. And in the modern world, relationships often feel fragile, confusing, and filled with unspoken pain. Think about the ways relationships strain under the pressures of daily life. Couples argue over money, chores, and unmet expectations. Parents and children clash over values and choices. Friendships dissolve when jealousy or misunderstanding creeps in. Even at work, relationships with colleagues can become sources of tension rather than support. What should be a source of comfort often becomes another layer of stress. And beneath these conflicts lies a common thread: the craving to be seen, valued, and loved exactly as we are. This craving is natural. Every human heart longs for connection. But when connection becomes attachment, suffering follows. The Buddha taught that attachment is like holding too tightly to something fragile. Imagine gripping a flower too hard. You crush its beauty in the very act of trying to keep it. In relationships, attachment often shows up as control. We want others to behave a certain way, to meet our needs, to reflect our desires. And when they don't, we feel anger, disappointment, or despair. Love becomes conditional. Connection turns into a battlefield of demands. That another source of pain is expectation. We carry silent scripts about how relationships should be. A partner should always understand me. A friend should always agree with me. A parent should never fail me. When reality doesn't match the script, suffering grows. Expectations are not wrong in themselves, but when they harden into rigid demands, they poison love. The Buddha's wisdom reminds us that clinging to expectation is like trying to stop the wind. The harder you resist, the more it pushes back. Consider the way many couples fight. One partner feels unheard, the other feels unappreciated. Voices rise, words cut, and silence follows. Beneath the anger is often a deeper wound. Do you see me? Do I matter to you? These fights are rarely about the dishes or the bills. They are about recognition and care. When the deeper need is unseen, conflict repeats endlessly. Loneliness is another form of relational suffering. In a world more connected than ever through technology, many feel more isolated than before. Social media gives the illusion of closeness, but often leaves hearts emptier, comparing highlights of others' lives with the quiet struggles of their own. The human need for genuine presence, for someone to listen, to sit in silence, to hold space, is as strong as ever. Yet many are starving for it. The Buddha did not ignore these struggles. His teachings on love and compassion go straight to the heart of relationships. One of his most profound teachings is metta-loving kindness. Metta is not romantic love, not attachment, not conditional affection. It is the steady wish for all beings to be safe, happy, and free from suffering. It begins with the self, radiates outward to loved ones, and eventually extends to all beings, even those we struggle to forgive. Practicing metta transforms relationships. Instead of demanding, "Love me this way," you begin to wish sincerely, "May you be well, may you be happy." This does not mean tolerating harm or abandoning healthy boundaries. It means releasing the need to control others and choosing instead to relate from compassion. When two people both practice this, love becomes less about possession and more about partnership, less about taking and more about giving. Another practice is deep listening. True listening is rare. Often, while another speaks, we are busy preparing our response or defending our position. But deep listening, as taught in Buddhist practice, is listening with the sole purpose of understanding. Imagine sitting across from someone and letting go of every plan, every defense, every need to fix. You simply hear them. You notice their tone, their pauses, their tears. You see not just their words, but their heart. This act of listening is itself healing. Many conflicts dissolve not because they are solved, but because someone finally feels heard. Mindfulness is equally essential in relationships. How many times have harsh words slipped out in moments of reactivity, words that could not be taken back? Mindfulness creates the pause, the sacred space between stimulus and response. Instead of reacting with anger, you notice the heat rising in your chest. Instead of lashing out, you breathe, you wait, you respond with care. This does not mean avoiding truth or suppressing feelings. It means choosing responses that heal instead of harm. There is also wisdom in impermanence. Every relationship changes. Friends grow distant, children grow up, partners evolve. Many people suffer because they cling to the idea that relationships must remain exactly as they were. But impermanence is not an enemy. It is a teacher. It reminds us to cherish each moment while it is here, instead of resenting its change. When you accept that relationships will shift, you stop grasping and start appreciating. Love becomes a gift, not a possession. The Buddha's life offered countless examples of compassion in relationships. He treated everyone from kings to beggars, from loyal followers to harsh critics, with the same steady kindness. He taught that hatred is never healed by hatred, but only by love. This truth applies in every home, every marriage, every friendship. When met with anger, we instinctively defend or attack. But when met with compassion, anger softens. Compassion does not always change the other, But it always changes us. Think of a time when someone forgave you, even when you didn't deserve it. Think of the relief, the gratitude, the warmth in your chest. That is the power of compassion. Relationships thrive not on perfection, but on forgiveness. Everyone fails. Everyone disappoints. But forgiveness keeps the heart open. Without it, love cannot survive. These teachings do not mean relationships will be free of struggle. Pain will still come. People will still misunderstand, betray, or leave. But with mindfulness, compassion, and loving kindness, relationships transform from cages of expectation into paths of growth. Each conflict becomes a chance to practice patience. Each disappointment becomes a lesson in letting go. Each moment of connection becomes a sacred reminder of interdependence. And as we begin to heal relationships with others, we must also face the relationship with ourselves. For many, the harshest conflicts are not with partners, parents, or friends, but with the inner critic. The voice that says, "You are not enough. You will never be loved." Healing relationships begins with softening that voice, with offering ourselves the same compassion we wish to receive. Without self-love, all other love becomes strained. This is where the next part of our journey leads. Having explored stress, money, and now the pain of relationships, we will turn to the inner battle of anxiety, the restless fear that haunts even moments of calm. How can Buddhist wisdom help us face the storms of the mind with courage and clarity? How can we transform anxiety into awareness and fear into freedom? That is the path we now prepare to walk together. Love is one of life's greatest teachers, yet also one of its greatest tests. At its best, love lifts us beyond ourselves, showing us the beauty of giving without condition. At its worst, love can become a battlefield of control, fear, and pain. The Buddha understood this paradox well. He taught that love, when mixed with clinging, brings suffering. But love infused with compassion and wisdom can become a doorway to freedom. One of the clearest signs of clinging in relationships is jealousy. Jealousy whispers, "If you love someone else, there will not be enough love left for me." It is rooted in scarcity, the fear that affection is limited, like a pie to be divided. But love is not pie. Love is like a flame. One candle can light another without losing its own brightness. In fact, the more it shares, the brighter the room becomes. To release jealousy, we must remember this truth. Love multiplies when given freely. It is fear that divides it. Control is another form of clinging. Many believe that to secure love, they must control it, directing a partner's choices, restricting their freedom, demanding their loyalty. But love held in a cage withers. The Buddha often compared clinging to holding a rope that burns your hand. The tighter you grip, the deeper the wound. Letting go does not mean abandoning care. It means trusting the other to walk their path and trusting yourself to remain whole no matter what happens. Love thrives in freedom, not in chains. Boundaries are an often misunderstood part of Buddhist practice in relationships. Compassion does not mean tolerating harm. Forgiveness does not mean allowing abuse. Loving kindness does not mean staying silent in the face of cruelty. A wise heart knows when to open and when to protect. Boundaries are not walls to shut others out. They are fences that define where respect must remain. In Buddhist terms, this is right action, living in a way that does not harm yourself or others. Healthy relationships rest on this balance. Open enough to love, strong enough to protect. Forgiveness is another essential teaching. Many carry old wounds from broken trust, harsh words, or abandoned promises. These wounds, left unhealed, harden into bitterness. Bitterness poisons not only the past, but also the present, coloring every new connection with suspicion. Forgiveness is the act of releasing this poison. It does not mean forgetting, nor pretending the harm never happened. It means loosening the grip of anger so your own heart can breathe again. The Buddha taught that holding on to anger is like holding a burning coal, waiting to throw it at someone else. In the end, the one burned is you. One simple forgiveness practice is to visualize the person who hurt you. See them clearly in your mind. Then imagine their own suffering, the confusion, fear, or ignorance that led to their actions. Whisper quietly, "May you find peace. May you find freedom." At first, this may feel impossible. The heart may resist, but even the attempt plants a seed. Over time, this seed can grow, softening bitterness and opening space for healing. Forgiveness frees not only the other, but also yourself. Relationships also require presence. In modern life, many live distracted, checking phones while talking, rushing through meals, multitasking conversations. True presence is rare, yet presence is the greatest gift you can give to someone you love. When you look into their eyes and give undivided attention, you say without words, "You matter. I see you." Presence turns ordinary moments into sacred ones. A shared meal, a quiet walk, even a few minutes of listening. These are the threads that weave strong bonds. Sometimes, despite our best efforts, relationships end. Friendships fade, marriages dissolve, families fracture. Loss is part of love. Many suffer deeply here, believing that the end of a relationship means failure. But Buddhist wisdom teaches impermanence once again. Every relationship, like every life, has its seasons. Some stay for decades, some for years, some for only a short time. Each carries lessons, joys, and growth. When we accept impermanence, endings no longer mean failure. They mean transformation. Love does not vanish. It changes form. Gratitude for what was can coexist with acceptance of what is. There is a story of two monks traveling together. They came to a river where a woman stood, afraid to cross. One monk lifted her onto his back, carried her across, and set her down safely. Hours later, the second monk, still upset, said, "Why did you carry that woman? We are not supposed to touch women." The first monk replied, "I set her down hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" The story reminds us that clinging to the past, whether to anger, regret, or longing, only weighs us down. To live fully, we must learn to set it down. Ultimately, relationships are mirrors. They reflect our joys, our wounds, our shadows, and our light. When we love, we see our capacity for generosity. When we fight, we see our hidden fears. When we forgive, we see our strength. Every connection is a teacher. The Buddha said that the path is not walked alone. We awaken together through the countless lessons relationships bring. And as we grow in these lessons, we realize that the greatest relationship of all is with ourselves. Self-compassion is the foundation of all other compassion. If you treat yourself with harshness, your love for others will be strained. If you accept yourself with kindness, your love for others will be steady. Loving kindness begins at home, yet even with compassion and wisdom, many hearts still carry a restless unease. Anxiety creeps in like a shadow, haunting even moments of peace. You may sit with a loved one, safe and cared for, and still feel the grip of fear in your chest. You may walk through life surrounded by people, yet feel the silent weight of dread. This is the next great struggle of modern life, anxiety. And once again, Buddhist wisdom offers a path not to erase anxiety, but to transform it into awareness and to walk with courage through the storms of the mind. Anxiety is a quiet storm that moves through the mind. It does not always shout, yet it lingers like a constant hum, unsettling even the calmest moments. You may sit in a comfortable room, surrounded by safety, and still feel your chest tighten, your breath shorten, your heart pound. Anxiety does not wait for disaster to strike. It convinces you disaster is already on its way. It whispers in the dark, something is wrong, something is missing, something will fall apart. And the more you listen, the louder it becomes. For many people, anxiety is the background music of modern life. It begins with small worries. Did I say the wrong thing? Will I finish this project on time? And then grows into restless nights of replaying conversations, imagining failures, rehearsing catastrophes. The body becomes trapped in survival mode, as if chased by an unseen predator. Muscles tense, digestion falters, sleep evades. Even joy is interrupted, because in the middle of laughter, anxiety asks, how long will this last? Why is anxiety so powerful today? Part of the answer lies in the speed of life. Technology keeps us always connected, always informed, always comparing. News alerts flash tragedies from every corner of the globe. Social feeds broadcast successes we fear we will never reach. Deadlines shorten, expectations rise, and silence becomes rare. The nervous system, designed for occasional danger, is now bombarded with constant stimulation. It cannot distinguish between a real threat and an imagined one. The result is a body living in constant alarm, not emotionally. Anxiety is rooted in fear of uncertainty. The mind craves control, but life refuses to be controlled. We want guarantees that we will be safe, that our loved ones will not suffer, that our future will unfold as planned. But guarantees do not exist. The gap between what we want and what life offers becomes the space where anxiety grows. And in that space, imagination fuels the fire. What if I lose my job? What if they leave me? What if I fail? Anxiety is the mind rehearsing pain that has not yet arrived. The Buddha understood this cycle deeply. Over 2,500 years ago, he taught that suffering arises from clinging to permanence in a world of change, clinging to certainty in a life of mystery. Anxiety is the direct expression of this clinging. It is the mind's attempt to resist impermanence. Yet resistance only multiplies suffering. The Buddhist path is not about controlling life, but about changing our relationship to it. Anxiety does not need to be fought. It needs to be seen, understood, and softened with compassion. Asterisk. One powerful practice is mindfulness of breath. When anxiety storms through the mind, the breath becomes shallow and rapid. By consciously returning to slow, steady breathing, you signal to the body, you are safe in this moment. This interrupts the cycle of panic. Imagine sitting quietly and taking one slow breath in, feeling the air enter your lungs. Then breathe out, long and gentle, like releasing a weight. Each breath is an anchor, holding you steady in the present moment. Anxiety lives in the future. Breath lives in the now. Another practice is observing thoughts without identification. Anxiety convinces us that every thought is truth. I will fail. They don't love me. Something bad will happen. But thoughts are not facts. They are clouds passing through the sky of awareness. In mindfulness practice, you learn to step back and watch. Here is fear. Here is doubt. Here is worry. When you name them without clinging, they lose some of their power. You realize you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that notices them. Compassion also plays a crucial role. Many people respond to anxiety with self-criticism. Why am I so weak? Why can't I just stop worrying? This only deepens the wound. Compassion says instead, this is hard. Anyone in my position would feel afraid. May I be gentle with myself. Imagine speaking to yourself as you would to a dear friend. This kindness softens the sharp edges of anxiety. The storm may still pass through, but you no longer face it alone. The Buddha told a story of a man pierced by an arrow. Instead of seeking help, the man demanded to know who shot it, for what distance, with what kind of bow. His questions delayed the healing. Anxiety works the same way. We try to predict every outcome, analyze every possibility, prepare for every scenario. But in the process, we forget to care for the wound of the present moment. The arrow of anxiety needs compassion now, not endless speculation about tomorrow. Another tool is the practice of the sacred pause. When anxiety rises, our instinct is to react, to flee, to fix, to fight. But pausing interrupts this reflex. In the pause, you take one breath, place a hand on your heart, and simply notice, this is fear. This is tension. No judgment, no running, just presence. The pause creates space, and in that space, the nervous system begins to settle. With practice, the pause becomes a refuge, a place you can return to whenever fear begins to overwhelm. Impermanence, once again, becomes a source of freedom. Anxiety often feels permanent, as if it will never end. But every wave rises and falls. Every storm passes. When you remind yourself, this too will pass, you weaken the grip of fear. You begin to see anxiety not as a permanent prison, but as a temporary visitor. You do not need to fight it. You can let it come and let it go. In daily life, small habits support this practice. Limiting constant news intake, creating spaces of silence, walking in nature, practicing gratitude, all these soften the soil in which anxiety grows. Gratitude, in particular, shifts the mind from fear of what might go wrong to appreciation of what is already right. Each time you pause to notice a moment of safety, a moment of joy, a moment of love, you train the mind to rest in presence instead of panicked out. None of this means anxiety disappears forever. The human mind will always imagine, prepare, and worry. But with mindfulness and compassion, anxiety no longer rules you. It becomes one voice among many, noticed but not obeyed. You learn to walk with fear instead of being driven by it. And in this walking, you discover courage, not the absence of fear, but the ability to keep moving with it. And so, as we stand in the heart of this teaching, we see a pattern forming. Stress, craving, relationships, and anxiety, they all arise from clinging, from the refusal to let life be what it is. The Buddhist path shows us a different way: awareness, compassion, and release. And yet, the journey goes even deeper. Beneath anxiety lies a more hidden wound, the sense of being never enough, of carrying guilt and self-criticism like heavy stones. How do we stop waging war against ourselves? That is where the next step leads, into the teaching of inner nonviolence, the art of living gently with our own hearts. Anxiety often disguises itself in subtle ways. It is not always the racing heart or the sleepless night. Sometimes it is the quiet restlessness that never leaves. You may find yourself scrolling endlessly on your phone, not out of joy, but out of unease. You may keep yourself busy, filling every hour with tasks because silence feels unbearable. Or you may hesitate to take steps forward, paralyzed by what-ifs. Anxiety is not always loud. Sometimes it is the silent engine running beneath the surface of life, shaping every choice, every word, every pause. One of the most exhausting aspects of anxiety is its persistence. It convinces us that if we think long enough, plan carefully enough, prepare for every scenario, then we will finally feel safe. But the truth is, no amount of planning guarantees certainty. The mind, in its attempt to control the future, actually feeds the cycle of fear. Like a hamster running endlessly in a wheel, we expend enormous energy, but never arrive anywhere new. The wheel of anxiety keeps turning until we learn to step off. The Buddha described this cycle in the teaching of the second arrow. The first arrow is the pain of life itself: loss, illness, change. These are inevitable. But the second arrow is the suffering we add through worry, fear, and resistance. We cannot always avoid the first arrow, but we can choose whether to add the second. Anxiety is often the second arrow, piercing us again, and again even before the first arrow lands. To live wisely is to notice this and to put down the second arrow with compassion. A story illustrates this well. A farmer once worried constantly about the weather. If it rained, he feared it would flood the fields. If it was sunny, he feared drought. Every day brought new anxieties about the harvest. One day, a neighbor asked, "Why do you worry so much about what you cannot control?" The farmer replied, "Because if I do not worry, I will not be prepared." But worry did not change the weather. It only robbed him of peace. When he finally learned to prepare wisely and then accept what came, he found relief. Anxiety had not changed the future. Letting go had changed his heart. In practice, letting go does not mean apathy. It means shifting from control to trust. Trust does not guarantee outcomes, but it allows the heart to rest in uncertainty. Trust says, "I will do what I can, and I will meet the rest with courage." This is not blind faith. It is the wisdom of knowing that life has always moved through change, and that we have always found a way through. When you look back at your life, you see countless moments where you feared you could not continue, and yet you did. Trust grows when you remember that you have survived before, and you will again. Meditation is a powerful ally here. Sitting quietly, even for a few minutes, can feel terrifying to an anxious mind. Thoughts rush in, fears grow louder, restlessness surges. But if you stay, breathe, and simply watch, something begins to shift. The thoughts rise and fall. The fears surge and fade. The restlessness comes and goes. You realize that anxiety, too, is impermanent. It does not define you. It is weather passing through the sky of awareness. Over time, meditation trains the nervous system to settle. It becomes a refuge where you remember that stillness is possible. Even in the midst of storms, compassion remains essential. Anxiety often brings shame. Why can't I handle this? Why am I always afraid? But shame only tightens the knot. Compassion loosens it. Place a hand on your heart and whisper, "This is hard. May I be kind to myself." This simple act changes the inner dialogue. It replaces the critic with a caregiver. And the anxious heart, like any frightened child, softens when it feels held. Community also helps. Anxiety isolates, convincing us that no one else understands. But when we share honestly, we find that many others carry the same fears. Speaking the truth aloud, "I am struggling, I feel afraid," dissolves shame. Others nod, listen, and remind us that we are not alone. The Buddha emphasized Sangha, the community of practice, for this reason. Healing is not only individual, it is collective. In the presence of others, anxiety loses its grip. Daily rituals support this journey. Begin the day with one deep breath before looking at your phone. Take a mindful walk, noticing the ground beneath your feet. Create spaces of silence where no screens intrude. End the day with gratitude, naming small joys. These practices are not dramatic, but they retrain the mind to rest in presence rather than fear. Over time, they form a steady rhythm that counters the chaos of anxiety. Anxiety will never vanish completely. The human mind is wired to anticipate and prepare. But with mindfulness, compassion, and trust, anxiety transforms from a tyrant into a teacher. It reminds us of our longing for safety, our need for presence, our capacity for courage. It teaches us that peace is not found in controlling the future, but in resting fully in this moment. And as we look forward, we see the next layer of suffering that often hides beneath anxiety, the violence we direct inward. Many live with an inner critic harsher than any enemy. They attack themselves for every mistake, punish themselves for every imperfection, and carry guilt like a heavy chain. This inner violence fuels stress, craving, relationship struggles, and anxiety itself. If we are to live in peace, we must learn a new way. the way of ahimsa, nonviolence toward our own hearts. This is the door we now prepare to open. There is a kind of violence that leaves no bruises, no visible scars, and yet it wounds more deeply than any weapon. It is the violence we direct toward ourselves. For many people, the harshest voice they will ever hear is not from a parent, a boss, or a stranger. It is from within. That inner critic whispers in the quiet moments, "You are not enough. You will fail. You should be better by now." And with each whisper, the heart grows heavier, the spirit weaker, until life itself begins to feel like a battlefield. This inner violence takes many forms. It may appear as perfectionism, the relentless demand that nothing you do is ever good enough. It may appear as shame, the belief that your mistakes define your worth. It may appear as constant comparison, measuring yourself against others and always coming up short. Or it may appear as guilt, carrying the weight of choices made long ago and believing you do not deserve peace. Each form cuts quietly, again and again, until self-worth bleeds away. Why do we do this to ourselves? For some, these patterns are inherited from childhood messages absorbed from parents, teachers, or peers. A child scolded harshly learns to scold themselves before anyone else can. A teenager judged for imperfection learns to judge themselves endlessly. These voices are not truly ours. They are echoes of the past. Yet over time, we adopt them as our own, believing they are the truth. The Buddha understood this suffering. He taught that the root of much pain is ignorance mistaking false beliefs for truth. The belief that we must be perfect to be loved, that we are broken beyond repair, that self-punishment will lead to growth. These are illusions. They do not liberate. They imprison. Ahimsa, the principle of nonviolence, offers another way. Nonviolence is not only about refusing to harm others. It is also about refusing to harm ourselves. It is the practice of meeting our own hearts with gentleness, even in the midst of failure and fear. Imagine a friend comes to you in tears, ashamed of a mistake. Would you scream at them, call them worthless, demand perfection? Of course not. You would listen, comfort, remind them of their goodness. And yet, when the same mistake is our own, many respond with cruelty rather than kindness. Ahimsa asks us treat ourselves as we would treat a dear friend. To place a hand on the heart and say, "You are human. You are learning. You are still worthy." This is not indulgence. It is healing. Harshness does not create strength. It creates fear. Kindness creates the safety in which true growth can happen. Think of a plant. If you beat it with sticks, it will not grow faster. If you nourish it with water and light, it flourishes. The same is true for the human heart. One practice of inner nonviolence is mindful awareness of self-talk. Pay attention to the words you use when speaking to yourself. Do they carry judgment, blame, criticism? If so, pause. Take a breath and consciously replace them with words of kindness. Instead of "I'm so stupid," say, "That was hard, but I'm learning." Instead of "I'll never succeed," say, "I am growing step by step." At first, these phrases may feel unnatural, but with repetition, they create new patterns in the mind, new grooves of compassion. Another practice is forgiveness of self. Many carry the heavy weight of past mistakes, replaying them endlessly, punishing themselves again and again. But the Buddha taught that clinging to the past only multiplies suffering. Forgiveness is not pretending the mistake never happened. It is acknowledging it, learning from it, and then releasing it. Imagine setting down a heavy stone you have carried for years. Your body feels lighter, your breath freer, your steps easier. This is what self-forgiveness offers. Meditation supports this journey. In metta meditation, you begin by repeating phrases of loving kindness toward yourself. May I be safe. May I be healthy. May I be at peace. May I live with ease. At first, the words may feel false, but over time, they plant seeds of gentleness in the heart. Slowly, the harsh inner voice begins to soften. Slowly, you begin to believe that you are worthy of the same compassion you give to others. There is a story of the Buddha meeting a grieving mother who had lost her child. She demanded medicine to bring the child back. The Buddha asked her to find a mustard seed from a house untouched by death. She searched every home, but found that every family had faced loss. Realizing she was not alone, her grief softened. This story teaches us that suffering is universal. We are not alone in our mistakes, our shame, our wounds. When we recognize this, compassion naturally arises for others and for ourselves. In daily life, practicing ahimsa may look simple. It may mean allowing yourself to rest without guilt. It may mean eating with mindfulness instead of judgment. It may mean pausing during a stressful day to breathe, reminding yourself that you are safe. It may mean choosing not to push through exhaustion, but to honor the body's need for care. Each act is small, but together they create a life rooted in gentleness rather than violence. Inner nonviolence does not mean avoiding responsibility. It does not excuse harmful behavior. True ahimsa includes accountability, but accountability is not punishment. It is growth. You can face your mistakes with honesty while still offering compassion. You can say, "I was unkind, and I will do better," without saying, "I am worthless." This distinction changes everything. It allows growth without fear, responsibility without shame. When practiced consistently, ahimsa reshapes the way we meet every challenge. Instead of, "What is wrong with me?" we begin to ask, "What do I need right now?" Instead of attacking ourselves, we learn to listen. And in listening, we find the path to healing. Anxiety softens, relationships deepen, and the heart begins to trust itself again. And as this trust grows, another hidden wound begins to reveal itself. The child within, the vulnerable self that learned long ago to survive through silence, pleasing, or hiding. To live fully, we must not only stop harming ourselves, we must learn to represent the parts of us that were never loved as they deserved. This is the next step, the gentle journey of meeting our inner child with the compassion we once needed and can now provide. The practice of inner nonviolence is not a single decision, but a daily choice. Each morning, the critic may rise again, whispering old judgments, replaying past mistakes, or predicting future failure. But each morning is also a chance to answer differently. When the voice says, "You are not enough," you can answer, "I am learning," and that is enough. When the thought says, "You will fail," you can respond, "I can try with courage." When shame says, "You do not deserve peace," you can remind yourself, "Every being deserves peace, and so do I." Over time, these small answers create a new language of the heart, one that speaks in kindness instead of cruelty. Consider the story of Angulimala, a man feared for his violence who encountered the Buddha. Rather than condemning him, the Buddha met him with calm compassion. Angulimala, touched by this kindness, renounced harm and devoted his life to peace. This story teaches us that even the most violent hearts can change when met with compassion. If compassion can transform a man who harmed so many, it can surely transform the small violence we direct inward. The critic within us does not need more criticism. It needs understanding, patience, and love. Ahimsa toward oneself also means caring for the body. In the rush of modern life, many treat their bodies harshly, pushing through exhaustion, ignoring pain, numbing stress with unhealthy habits. Yet the body is not a machine to be exploited. It is the vessel through which we experience life. To live with inner nonviolence is to treat the body with respect, offering rest, nourishment, and movement, not as punishment, but as acts of love. Each meal eaten mindfully, each walk taken with awareness, each night of true rest is a practice of I am say dot. It also means caring for the mind. Many fill their days with noise, distraction, and endless input. But the mind, like the body, needs rest. Silence is medicine. Even a few minutes of sitting quietly, breathing deeply, and letting the thoughts settle is a gift of nonviolence. In silence, the harsh voices grow softer. In stillness, the heart begins to heal. Guilt is another heavy weight many carry. Some live haunted by past choices, convinced that they can never be forgiven. But guilt, when it lingers too long, becomes another form of inner violence. The Buddha taught that every moment offers a chance to begin again. What matters is not how many times you have stumbled, but how many times you stand again with sincerity. To practice ahimsa is to release the whip of guilt and replace it with the courage of renewal. You can acknowledge the harm, make amends if possible, and then choose not to punish yourself forever. In this way, guilt transforms into responsibility, and responsibility becomes growth. There is also the violence of comparison. How often do we look at others and say, they are better, smarter, stronger, happier? Each comparison is a cut against ourselves. But Buddhist wisdom reminds us, each life is unique, shaped by countless causes and conditions. To compare one life to another is like comparing the sun to the moon. Both shine in their own time, their own way. Ahimsa means honoring your path as it is, without constant comparison. It means trusting that your worth is not measured against anyone else's. When you begin to live with inner nonviolence, subtle changes appear. You notice you speak more gently, both to yourself and to others. You notice you are less quick to anger, because you no longer live in a constant state of inner battle. You notice moments of joy arriving more easily, sunlight on the face, the sound of laughter, the warmth of a meal. The heart, no longer bruised by its own hand, begins to open. And as it opens, compassion flows outward more naturally. Loving others becomes easier when you have learned to love yourself. But this journey is not only about stopping harm, it is also about nurturing. Imagine a garden that has been neglected for years. The first step is to stop damaging it. No more trampling, no more poison. But the next step is to water, to plant, to tend. In the same way, inner nonviolence is not only about silencing the critic. It is about actively nurturing joy, creativity, and love within yourself. Sing even if no one hears. Write even if no one reads. Rest even if others call you lazy. These acts are seeds of self-compassion, growing into a life of balance and peace. Still, many find that even after practicing kindness toward themselves, old wounds remain. These wounds often come from childhood, from times when love was absent, when safety was broken, when acceptance was denied. The inner critic is often the echo of a frightened child, still trying to survive. To truly heal, we must go deeper. We must turn toward that inner child and offer the love and safety that was once missing. This is the next step on the path, not only stopping the violence we direct inward, but embracing the vulnerable self within us, guiding it with tenderness. This is where our journey now leads, into the healing of the inner child. The child who once felt unseen, unheard, unloved, still waits within us. And through mindfulness, compassion, and Buddhist wisdom, we can learn to meet that child, to hold them, and to finally say the words they needed all along. You are safe. You are loved. You are enough. Deep within every adult lives a child who remembers. The child remembers the warmth of love and the sting of neglect. The child remembers laughter that lit up the room and words that cut like knives. For many, this inner child carries unhealed wounds, moments of abandonment, rejection, or fear that still shape life today. These wounds may not always be visible, but they live quietly in the nervous system, in the patterns of thought, and the way we respond to love and loss. To heal is not to erase the past, but to turn toward that child with the compassion and safety they once lacked. Many struggles of adulthood self-criticism, anxiety, fear of abandonment, are echoes of the inner child's pain. Imagine a child reaching for comfort and finding silence. That child learns to believe, I am not worthy of love. Imagine a child punished for mistakes instead of guided with care. That child learns, I must be perfect or I will be rejected. Imagine a child abandoned in moments of need. That child learns, I cannot trust anyone. These beliefs, carried into adulthood, shape relationships, careers, and inner dialogue. The adult continues the story the child began, unless it is seen and healed. The Buddha understood that suffering has roots. He taught that to heal, we must look deeply into the causes of pain. Just as a tree grows from roots hidden beneath the soil, adult suffering grows from the hidden roots of childhood wounds. If we only cut the branches, symptoms like anxiety or perfectionism, they grow back. But if we touch the roots with awareness and compassion, true transformation becomes possible. Healing the inner child begins with recognition. Many adults dismiss their pain, saying, that was long ago. It doesn't matter now, but the body remembers. The nervous system remembers. Triggers in the present often awaken the child within. A partner's criticism may reopen the wound of a parent's harshness. A friend's silence may feel like childhood neglect. By recognizing that these reactions are not weakness, but echoes of old wounds, we begin the work of healing. One practice is visualization. Sit quietly, close your eyes, and imagine yourself as a child. See your face, your eyes, your posture. Notice what emotions arise: fear, sadness, longing. Approach this child gently, as you would approach a scared animal. Whisper words of safety. I see you. I am here for you. You are not alone anymore. At first, this may feel strange, but over time, the inner child begins to trust. Each moment of connection plants seeds of healing. Another practice is writing letters. Write from your adult self to your inner child. Acknowledge the pain. I know you felt abandoned. I know you were scared. Offer compassion. It was not your fault. You did not deserve that. Promise protection. I am here now. I will not leave you. Writing in this way bridges the gap between past and present, allowing the adult self to represent the child within. Mindfulness supports this work. When strong emotions arise, fear, anger, shame, pause and ask, who is feeling this right now? Is it the adult or is it the child within me? Often, it is the child's voice echoing. By recognizing this, you can respond not with harshness, but with care. You can say, I hear you, little one. You are safe now. This transforms reactivity into compassion. Community also plays a role. Healing the inner child is not only personal, it is relational. Safe, supportive connections with others can provide the experiences the child once lacked. Being listened to, accepted, and cared for as you are rewrites old patterns of neglect. This is why Sangha, the Buddhist community, is so important. In the presence of compassionate others, the wounded child learns that love is possible. The Buddha's teachings on compassion are central here. He often spoke of loving kindness as a mother's love for her only child, fierce, unconditional, protective. This is the love we must offer to our own inner child. It is not indulgence. It is nourishment. It is the gentle soil in which new growth can emerge. When we offer ourselves this kind of love, we heal not only the past, but also the future. Healing the inner child also means releasing blame. Many carry anger toward parents or caregivers who failed them. This anger is natural, But holding it forever is like drinking poison and expecting the other to suffer. The Buddha taught that understanding leads to compassion. Parents too were once children, shaped by their own wounds, their own ignorance. This does not excuse harm, but it explains it. When we see this, forgiveness becomes possible, not for their sake, but for our own freedom. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting or reconciling. It means loosening the chains that bind us to old pain. Practical steps support this healing. Creating safe routines, regular meals, rest, play provides the stability the child once lacked. Engaging in creative expression, art, music, dance gives voice to feelings long buried. Seeking therapy or spiritual guidance offers a safe container for deep work. Each step is a message to the inner child. You are cared for now. You are safe. Over time, the inner child begins to trust. The harsh inner critic softens. The anxious thoughts lose their grip. Relationships become healthier because the child no longer controls them from the shadows. You begin to live not from old wounds, but from present wholeness. And as healing deepens, gratitude arises. Gratitude not for the pain itself, but for the strength it cultivated, the compassion it awakened, the wisdom it revealed. The inner child, once wounded, becomes a source of empathy. You understand the suffering of others more deeply because you have known your own. And this understanding becomes a gift you can share with the world. Yet healing the inner child is not the end. Beyond personal wounds lies another layer of suffering. The collective wounds we share as communities and societies. Just as individuals carry pain, so do cultures. Prejudice, violence, inequality, and division are wounds of the collective heart. To live fully, we must also learn how. Buddhist wisdom guides us in healing not only ourselves, but also the world we share. This is where the next step leads. From the tender work of inner child healing to the larger work of compassion in community, where personal peace becomes the seed of collective transformation. As the inner child begins to feel seen, heard, and loved, profound changes ripple through the adult life. The patterns of fear, self-criticism, and avoidance begin to loosen. You notice that you are no longer driven by the old scripts of inadequacy. Decisions feel freer, not because circumstances have changed, but because the inner child now has a voice, a presence, and a witness in your adult self. You no longer act solely out of survival. You begin to act from wholeness. This integration transforms relationships. Conflicts with partners, friends, or colleagues no longer trigger disproportionate fear or defensiveness. The adult, guided by the healed child, responds with clarity and empathy instead of reactivity. Arguments become opportunities for understanding rather than battles to be won. Disagreements are seen as natural differences, not as threats to love or acceptance. And in these shifts, a quiet sense of freedom emerges. The freedom to be present, to be authentic, to engage with life fully. Healing the inner child also strengthens resilience. Life's inevitable difficulties, loss, illness, failure, still occur, but the impact is softened. The adult self, informed by the compassion and trust offered to the inner child, responds with steadiness. Instead of spiraling into fear or guilt, you meet challenges with grounded presence. You may feel sadness or disappointment, but these emotions no longer define your sense of self. The inner child has learned that even in hard moments, they are safe, supported, and loved. Mindfulness remains central in this work. By observing the body, emotions, and thoughts, you can identify when old patterns resurface. Perhaps a passing comment triggers shame reminiscent of childhood neglect. Perhaps a perceived failure evokes the fear of abandonment. In these moments, pause. Take a breath. Recognize the inner child's presence. Offer reassurance. I am here. You are safe. You are loved. This simple practice interrupts the automatic replay of old wounds. allowing healing to continue in real time. Another essential aspect is self-compassion in action. It is one thing to feel kindness internally, but it is another to translate it into tangible support. This can mean creating safe spaces in daily life, a quiet corner for reflection, time to pursue creativity, or moments to rest without guilt. It can mean setting boundaries that protect the child's well-being, limiting exposure to toxicity, choosing supportive relationships, and practicing discernment. Every act of care is a message to the inner child. You are worthy. You are protected. You are safe. The journey also involves reclaiming play, curiosity, and wonder qualities often suppressed in childhood by fear or neglect. Engage in activities that bring joy without expectation or productivity. Draw, dance, explore nature, or simply lie in the sun and watch the clouds. These moments reconnect the adult self with the innate innocence and creativity of the inner child. They remind the heart that life can be enjoyed simply because it is. Healing the inner child naturally extends to healing interpersonal dynamics. When the wounded child within feels safe, relationships shift. You no longer seek validation from others to fill emptiness. You no longer project old fears onto partners, friends, or colleagues. You can love freely, set boundaries kindly, and communicate openly. Patterns of codependency, anger, or avoidance begin to dissolve. Presence and authenticity replace fear-driven behavior. Forgiveness, both toward oneself and others, deepens this healing. Perhaps parents, caregivers, or significant figures failed to provide the care you needed. The pain is valid. The impact is real. Yet forgiveness is not about condoning harm. It is about releasing the hold it has over your heart. By practicing forgiveness, you free the inner child from repeating cycles of resentment, allowing space for love, joy, and creativity to emerge. Visualization exercises support ongoing integration. Imagine cradling your younger self, offering warmth, safety, and acceptance. Picture them growing stronger under your care, learning that mistakes do not diminish their value, that their voice matters, and that they are never alone. This visualization does not erase the past, but it rewrites its impact. The wounds remain as markers of lived experience, but they no longer dictate behavior or self-worth. The inner child becomes a partner, guiding the adult with insight, authenticity, and courage. Daily rituals solidify this transformation. Begin or end the day with moments of acknowledgement. Speak kindly to yourself. Write reflections of care. Engage in mindful breathing. Celebrate small victories, no matter how minor they seem. Affirm the inner child's presence with words like, "You are seen. You are loved. You are safe." Repetition deepens trust, gradually reshaping neural pathways that once reinforced fear and self-criticism. As healing progresses, something remarkable happens. The heart begins to expand beyond the personal. Compassion for oneself naturally extends to compassion for others. The empathy cultivated through inner child work allows one to recognize suffering in friends, family, and even strangers. Boundaries remain, but kindness flows more freely. This is a pivotal moment in the journey. The personal wounds are no longer a source of limitation, but a wellspring of understanding and connection. The Buddhist teaching on dependent origination illuminates this shift. Just as our suffering arises from interdependent causes, so does our healing. By attending to the inner child, cultivating mindfulness, and practicing loving kindness, we change not only our own experience, but also the dynamics of the world we inhabit. The ripple effect spreads quietly yet powerfully. Relationships improve, conflicts diminish, and moments of presence multiply. In the final stages of inner child healing, the adult learns to navigate life with balanced awareness. The inner child still exists, as they always will, but they are no longer a source of automatic reactivity. They are a companion, a teacher, and a guide. The adult carries the wisdom, compassion, and courage to respond to life skillfully, while the inner child provides authenticity, spontaneity, and joy. Together, they create a harmonious whole. This integration is not linear. Old wounds may resurface. Stress, anxiety, and craving may return. Yet with consistent practice, the inner child's voice is met with care rather than fear. The patterns that once drove suffering become opportunities for continued growth. Healing is a lifelong practice, not a destination, and each day offers a chance to reaffirm safety, love, and presence. Finally, the work of the inner child naturally prepares the heart for deeper teachings of interconnectedness and liberation. Once we have cultivated compassion for ourselves, released violence inward, and nurtured the child within, we are ready to explore the broader truths of dependent origination, emptiness, and the art of enough. The foundation of personal healing is essential before stepping into these more subtle dimensions of Buddhist wisdom, ensuring that the insights we receive are embodied, not merely intellectual dot, and so, with the inner child healed, we can walk forward with gentleness and courage. We are no longer driven solely by fear, craving, or shame. We carry a heart that knows safety, a mind that knows clarity, and a spirit that knows freedom. Each breath becomes an invitation to presence. Each relationship becomes an opportunity to practice compassion. Each moment becomes a space for awakening. And from this foundation, the next teachings of the Dharma can unfold naturally, offering even greater freedom, understanding, and peace. Life is not a series of isolated events. Every thought, every emotion, every action arises in a web of causes and conditions, each influencing the next in ways often unseen. This is the essence of pratityasamutpa, or dependent origination, a foundational teaching of the Buddha. It is a lens through which we can understand suffering, liberation, and the delicate patterns that shape our experience. By seeing life in this light, we begin to understand why things happen, why we feel what we feel, and how we can respond with wisdom rather than reactivity. Many of our struggles arise from a sense of separation. We believe that life should unfold exactly as we desire. We cling to outcomes, identities, and expectations. When reality diverges from these desires, suffering emerges. Anxiety, anger, craving, and grief, all these arise not in isolation, but as effects of interdependent causes. Understanding dependent origination allows us to see that suffering is not a personal flaw, but a natural consequence of conditions, many of which we did not create. Imagine a single drop of water falling into a pond. The ripple spreads outward, touching every corner. That one drop is connected to every wave, every reflection, every movement on the surface. So it is with life. Every action, thought, and word sends ripples into the vast pond of existence. Sometimes these ripples return in ways we recognize. Sometimes they return subtly, like a shift in current we feel but cannot trace. Understanding dependent origination is seeing these ripples clearly. Consider anger. It does not arise from nowhere. Perhaps someone speaks harshly. Perhaps a memory surfaces. Perhaps stress has primed the nervous system for reactivity. The anger feels immediate, as if born in the present moment. But in reality, it is the effect of many preceding conditions, past experiences, unmet needs, physical tension, and habitual patterns of thought. When we see anger in this way, it loses some of its power. We can meet it with awareness instead of being swept away. Craving works similarly. We desire something of promotion, recognition, or love, and the craving feels like an unstoppable force. Yet it is dependent on conditions, cultural messaging, past experiences, perceived lack, and attachment. By tracing the chain of causes, we recognize that craving is not permanent, not intrinsic to who we are. It is a process that can be influenced, softened, and transformed. Dependent origination also reveals the nature of personal responsibility. While we do not create every condition in life, we do contribute to the present moment through our actions, speech, and thought. Each choice is a node in the web of causality. When we act with mindfulness, kindness, and awareness, we influence the unfolding of life positively, both for ourselves and for others. Conversely, unmindful action perpetuates suffering, not only for ourselves, but within the interdependent network we inhabit. One of the simplest ways to observe dependent origination is through the chain of perception. A stimulus occurs, a look, a word, a sound. The mind interprets it based on memory, emotion, and expectation. A reaction follows: anger, fear, joy, desire. That reaction triggers further thoughts and behaviors, influencing the environment and the people around us. Understanding this chain shows that reactions are not simply arbitrary. They are the product of causes that can be observed and understood. By intervening in this chain with awareness, we can change the course of our experience. The Buddha illustrated this concept through the 12-link chain of dependent origination. Birth leads to aging and death. Ignorance leads to formation. Formation to consciousness. Consciousness to name and form. Name and form to the 6 senses, and so on, culminating in suffering. This teaching is not abstract or fatalistic. It is a map. It reveals that suffering is not random, not arbitrary, and not permanent. By understanding the links, we see where change is possible. Imagine the mind as a garden. Some seeds are old, planted long ago by circumstances and habits. Others are new, planted intentionally. Without awareness, the old seeds grow unchecked. Weeds of anger, fear, and craving dominate. But with mindfulness, we notice each seed, each sprout, and choose which to nurture. Weeding the garden is not about judgment or force. It is about attention, care, and understanding. Dependent origination is the map of the soil, showing which seeds are fertile, which conditions nurture suffering, and which nurture freedom. Understanding this interconnectedness also fosters compassion. When someone acts cruelly, we can see that their behavior arises from countless conditions: upbringing, pain, cultural pressures, unmet needs, and habitual reactions. Seeing their actions as effects rather than intrinsic flaws does not excuse harm, but it opens the heart to empathy. Compassion emerges naturally when we understand the web of causes behind every being's actions. The same understanding applies inwardly. When we feel anger, jealousy, fear, or shame, we can trace these emotions to their conditions rather than condemning ourselves for being bad or weak. We recognize this suffering is the result of causes, many of which are beyond our current control. And yet, awareness of these causes gives us the power to respond differently, to intervene in the chain, and to create conditions for freedom instead of suffering. This insight transforms everyday life. It changes the way we approach conflict, success, failure, and loss. A disagreement at work is no longer simply an attack on our self-worth. It is an interaction influenced by many conditions. A personal failure is no longer proof of inadequacy. It is a moment arising from preceding causes, offering an opportunity to learn, adjust, and respond with wisdom. Life becomes a series of interrelated processes rather than a series of personal judgments. Mindfulness practices reinforce this understanding. By observing the rise and fall of thoughts, emotions, and bodily sensations, we see the patterns that create suffering. A thought arises. I am not enough. Observe it. Where does it come from? What conditions fuel it? A feeling arises. Anxiety. Observe it. What causes support this reaction? By tracing these conditions with curiosity and compassion, we dismantle their automatic power over us. Awareness becomes the tool to shift the chain of causes, creating new links of ease, balance, and clarity. Dependent origination also offers hope. It reminds us that no condition is fixed, no pattern permanent. Just as suffering arises from causes, liberation arises from causes. By cultivating mindfulness, compassion, ethical action, and wisdom, we generate conditions for freedom. Every intentional choice becomes a seed of transformation. Every act of kindness, every moment of presence, every breath of awareness reshapes the web of causes that define our experience. In practical terms, this means observing not only the mind, but also the environment. Surround yourself with people, activities, and habits that foster clarity and calm. Avoid conditions that perpetuate stress, craving, and reactivity. Recognize that the mind is influenced by what it consumes: words, images, actions, and thoughts. Choose the conditions that nurture insight rather than feeding old patterns of suffering. Finally, dependent origination reminds us that we are never separate from the world we inhabit. Just as our thoughts and actions are shaped by conditions, our lives influence countless others. Compassion, ethical conduct, and mindfulness have far-reaching consequences, often beyond what we can see. By living with awareness of these interconnections, we participate consciously in the web of life, shaping both personal and collective experience. From this understanding, freedom arises. Freedom is not control over life, but mastery over our response to it. Freedom is not isolation, but conscious participation in the unfolding of existence. By tracing causes, observing patterns, and intervening with awareness and compassion, we discover that suffering is not inevitable. We are not powerless. We are active participants in the interdependent dance of life. And as we grasp this teaching, the path naturally unfolds to the next insight, the nature of emptiness, or shunyata. Having understood the interdependent causes of suffering, we are ready to explore the liberating truth that nothing exists in isolation, that all phenomena are empty of inherent, fixed essence, and that in this understanding lies profound freedom. As we explore dependent origination more deeply, it becomes clear that life is a vast network of interconnected events, thoughts, and actions. Nothing exists in isolation. Every moment is shaped by countless factors: past experiences, present circumstances, societal influences, and the myriad conditions of the environment. When we realize this, we understand that blaming ourselves or others for suffering is limited. We begin to see that suffering is a pattern, a process, a series of conditions coming together. Consider anger once again. Anger is rarely born solely from one incident. It is conditioned by a history of past hurts, current stressors, and biological responses. A colleague's careless comment may ignite rage, but the fury is amplified by fatigue, insecurity, and the memory of previous criticism. Understanding the chain of conditions reveals that anger is not an unchangeable part of who we are. It is a reaction arising from conditions that can be observed, interrupted, and transformed. This perspective transforms responsibility. We are neither powerless nor all-powerful. While we cannot control every condition, we can cultivate awareness of causes and effects. Every choice, every action, every thought creates conditions that shape our experience and the experiences of others. When we act mindfully, we become active participants in the process of creating ease rather than suffering. Even small acts of kindness, patience, and clarity ripple outward, influencing the web of interdependence in ways that may not be immediately visible. The Buddha used simple analogies to illustrate dependent origination. He compared life to a farmer tending a field. Seeds represent causes. Conditions like sunlight, water, and soil determine how the seeds grow. Some seeds may flourish, others may fail. The farmer does not control the growth entirely, but by understanding conditions and applying skillful care, the harvest can be nurtured. In life, our actions are like tending seeds. Mindfulness, ethical conduct, and compassion are the sunlight, water, and soil that cultivate positive outcomes. Dependent origination also illuminates the roots of suffering. The traditional 12-link chain begins with ignorance, which gives rise to mental formations, consciousness, name and form. The 6 senses: contact, feeling, craving, clinging, becoming, birth, and finally aging and death. While this may seem complex, the essence is simple. Suffering arises from unawareness of how causes and conditions generate experience. By bringing awareness, we interrupt the chain and liberation becomes possible. Let us take a practical example. Anxiety arises because we cling to a fixed sense of self and fear loss or uncertainty. By recognizing the conditions that fuel anxiety past experiences, habitual thoughts, external pressures, we gain the power to respond differently. Mindfulness pauses the automatic chain. Compassion softens the intensity. Insight reveals the impermanent and interdependent nature of the experience. In this way, what once felt inevitable becomes transformable. Understanding dependent origination also fosters deep compassion for others. When someone acts cruelly, we can observe the network of causes shaping their behavior. Past trauma, cultural conditioning, fear, ignorance, and current circumstances. Seeing their actions as effects rather than intrinsic flaws opens the heart. Compassion is not indulgence. It is clarity. It allows us to respond with wisdom rather than reactive anger, offering both protection and understanding. Equally, dependent origination encourages humility. We are not the isolated masters of our lives. Our successes, joys, and even our failures arise from countless unseen factors. Supportive people, circumstances beyond our control, and the natural unfolding of events. This realization reduces arrogance and fosters gratitude. Life is no longer a personal conquest. It becomes a shared journey in which every being's experience is intertwined with our own dot in daily practice. Dependent origination can be observed through simple awareness exercises. Notice how thoughts arise in response to events. Observe the physical sensations and emotions that accompany them. Ask, what conditions are shaping this moment? How are my thoughts, feelings, and bodily responses interconnected? This inquiry is not intellectual. It is lived. It trains the mind to see patterns, to recognize impermanence, and to respond with skill rather than habit. This understanding also informs ethical living. Actions are not isolated. They create ripples through the web of interdependence. Harsh words, unkind deeds, and careless decisions may seem small, but their effects propagate in ways we may never fully see. Conversely, acts of generosity, patience, and care create conditions for harmony and growth. Recognizing this interdependence deepens responsibility and encourages skillful conduct in all areas of life. Dependent origination prepares the mind for the next profound insight, emptiness or shunyata. Once we understand that all phenomena arise in dependence on conditions, we begin to see that nothing exists independently, inherently, or permanently. The self, events, emotions, and even the world itself are processes rather than fixed entities. This insight is liberating. It reveals that the fears, clinging, and suffering we experience are not inevitable truths, but temporary phenomena that can be observed, understood, and transformed. That it is important to clarify. Emptiness does not mean nothingness or nihilism. Rather, it is the recognition that all phenomena are empty of inherent, fixed essence. Flowers bloom and fade, thoughts rise and fall, joy and pain come and go. By seeing the impermanent, interdependent nature of reality, we are freed from the illusion that clinging to anything will provide lasting satisfaction. Life is no longer a battle to control solid objects, but a dance with dynamic processes. Practicing awareness of dependent origination involves continuous observation. Each experience, pleasant or unpleasant, is seen as a moment arising from conditions. Mindfulness allows us to witness these processes without clinging or aversion. Compassion allows us to meet them gently. Insight allows us to understand their transient, interdependent nature. Over time, this integrated practice transforms the mind, dissolving rigid identification with thoughts, emotions, and outcomes in relationships. Dependent origination fosters empathy. Conflicts can be reframed as interactions shaped by conditions, not personal attacks. Misunderstandings reveal patterns of conditioning in both ourselves and others. By seeing the causes behind behavior, we respond with clarity and kindness rather than reaction and blame. The web of interdependence becomes a map for skillful engagement rather than a source of frustration. Even in personal suffering, dependent origination offers freedom. When we trace back the causes of our pain, we recognize that change is possible. Craving, anger, fear, and attachment are not permanent fixtures of identity. They are conditioned phenomena. By altering conditions through mindfulness, ethical conduct, compassion, and wisdom, we can transform suffering into insight, reactivity into freedom, and fear into peace. This teaching also emphasizes the role of intention. While we cannot control all conditions, the intentions we cultivate shape the future. Acts of generosity, patience, and compassion create conditions for well-being. Acts of negligence, cruelty, or indifference create conditions for suffering. In understanding this, we see that our choices matter not in isolation, but as part of the vast, interdependent web of life. In summary, dependent origination provides both understanding and empowerment. It reveals the causes of suffering and points toward the conditions for freedom. It encourages mindfulness, compassion, and ethical action. It deepens empathy and humility, and it prepares the mind to see the next level of insight, the liberating emptiness of all phenomena, which will be explored in the following section. After understanding the interdependent web of life, the mind is ready for a deeper insight, emptiness or shunyata. At first, the word can feel unsettling. Empty? The mind asks, does this mean nothing exists? Does this mean life has no meaning? These reactions are natural. Yet emptiness is not a void, not nihilism, not a rejection of life. It is the recognition that nothing exists independently, inherently, or permanently. Everything arises in dependence on conditions. Nothing stands alone. Nothing is fixed. And in this recognition lies profound freedom. Consider a river. Water flows continuously, taking the shape of its banks, responding to gravity, influenced by rainfall, temperature, and the land it traverses. We cannot say the river is a single, unchanging entity. It is a process. It appears as a river, but it is not permanent. It is empty of fixed essence. And yet, it functions, nourishes, and sustains life. Similarly, all phenomena ourselves, our thoughts, our experiences exist as processes, not as static things. Emptiness does not negate experience. We still feel joy, pain, love, or loss. What emptiness reveals is that these experiences are not solid, permanent, or inherently ours. They arise due to conditions, and they pass when conditions change. This understanding softens the grip of clinging, because we see that holding tightly to any thought, feeling, or identity is like trying to hold water in our hands. The harder we grasp, the more it slips. This insight transforms fear. Many anxieties arise because we believe life or self must be fixed to be safe. We cling to identities, roles, and outcomes, fearing loss or change. Emptiness teaches that nothing is fixed. Change is natural. Impermanence is not a threat. It is the flow of life itself. When we see this, we can respond with flexibility and equanimity, moving through challenges without being imprisoned by them. The Buddha illustrated emptiness with simple metaphors. He compared the self to a chariot. A chariot is composed of wheels, axles, wood, nails, and labor. Take away any part, and it is no longer a chariot. The chariot does not exist independently. It is a label applied to a combination of conditions. Similarly, the self is not a fixed, singular entity. It is a combination of body, mind, sensations, perceptions, and consciousness. This insight dissolves rigid identification and opens space for freedom. Emptiness also transforms suffering. Much suffering arises from attachment clinging to self, to objects, to desires, to outcomes. When we recognize that all phenomena are empty of inherent existence, clinging loses its power. The tightness in the chest, the tension in the mind, the fear of loss, they begin to soften. We still experience them, but they no longer control us. Awareness becomes the container in which experiences rise and fall without causing harm. Relationships, too, benefit from this understanding. When we cling to others as fixed entities who must behave in specific ways, we generate conflict and suffering. Emptiness teaches that others are also processes, arising from countless conditions. Love flows more freely when it is not a cage. Compassion becomes easier because we see that everyone is shaped by causes, influenced by circumstances, and not inherently wrong or right. Emptiness does not eliminate morality or ethics. On the contrary, recognizing the interdependent, empty nature of life deepens responsibility. Since all actions are connected, our choices ripple outward. Acts of kindness, patience, and wisdom create favorable conditions. Acts of cruelty, neglect, or ignorance create suffering. Understanding emptiness heightens mindfulness, encouraging skillful engagement with the world. A daily practice for realizing emptiness is observing the arising and passing of thoughts. Notice a thought. It appears, persists for a moment, and then fades. It has no fixed essence. It is empty. Similarly, notice a feeling or sensation. It arises, shifts, and dissolves. Empty does not mean unreal. It means impermanent, conditioned, and interconnected. This direct observation cultivates clarity and freedom. Meditation on emptiness also softens the grip of self-judgment. The critical voice often treats thoughts, emotions, or past mistakes as solid evidence of inadequacy. Emptiness reveals that these mental constructs are transient, conditioned, and interdependent. They do not define the self. They are events passing through awareness. This insight allows self-compassion to emerge naturally because the harsh judgments are no longer taken as ultimate truth. Even in moments of intense suffering, emptiness provides relief. Grief, loss, illness, and disappointment still occur. What changes is our relationship to them. Recognizing that these experiences are empty arising due to conditions and passing with them reduces fear, clinging, and resistance. Pain is still felt, but it is met with wisdom, not panic. Awareness becomes the vessel in which life flows freely. The integration of emptiness also deepens spiritual practice. Meditation, mindfulness, and ethical conduct gain clarity. We see that striving, craving, and grasping are based on illusions of solidity. By observing impermanence and emptiness, we cultivate detachment, not indifference, but freedom from being trapped by the illusion of fixedness. We can engage with life fully, without being enslaved by desire or fear. A powerful way to embody emptiness is through compassion. When we recognize that ourselves and others are empty of fixed identity, we are less prone to anger, judgment, or attachment. Compassion flows naturally because the mind is no longer rigid. The heart opens, free from the chains of clinging. Acts of generosity, kindness, and patience arise effortlessly. Emptiness is the soil in which true love and compassion can grow. Consider the mind as a sky. Thoughts, emotions, and sensations are clouds passing through. The clouds are real, and they have shape and color, but they do not define the sky. The sky is vast, open, and unchanging. Observing with awareness, we see clouds appear and disappear. Similarly, in emptiness, we witness phenomena without being consumed by them. The mind remains open, spacious, and free. Emptiness also intersects beautifully with dependent origination. Understanding that all phenomena arise from causes leads naturally to seeing their emptiness. Nothing exists independently, nothing lasts forever, nothing is inherently fixed. When these truths are integrated, we see that the root of suffering attachment to self, desire, and permanence can be loosened. Freedom arises from insight into the interdependent and empty nature of life. Finally, emptiness encourages humility and gratitude. Since everything is interconnected and impermanent, each moment is precious. Each breath, each encounter, each opportunity becomes a gift. Recognizing the fragility and beauty of life deepens appreciation, softens fear, and cultivates joy. The heart learns to dance with impermanence rather than resist it, to love fully without grasping, and to live with profound awareness of the interconnected web of existence. And so, having explored emptiness, the mind is prepared for the next teaching, the gentle dissolution of ego and the art of enough. With the insights of stress, craving, relationships, anxiety, inner nonviolence, the inner child, dependent origination, and emptiness as foundation, we are ready to explore the final steps toward freedom, sufficiency, and grace in life. Asterisk emptiness is not only an intellectual insight, it is lived. To truly embody it, we observe life moment by moment. Thoughts arise and fade. Emotions flare and dissipate. Events occur and pass. The recognition that these phenomena are empty, arising due to causes and conditions, softens the need to control, cling, or resist. In this softening, we begin to experience freedom. Consider fear. Fear often arises from imagining permanence and solidity where none exists. A relationship may feel fragile, a career may feel threatened, a health concern may feel insurmountable. These fears are powerful because we perceive them as fixed threats. Emptiness reminds us that all situations are transient. Conditions shift. Events arise and dissolve. Recognizing this, we can face fear without being consumed by it. We respond with awareness, patience, and clarity rather than panic. Emptiness also transforms desire. Craving stems from the belief that fulfillment lies in acquiring or holding on to something permanent. A promotion, a relationship, a possession, these are pursued as if they will guarantee happiness. Yet everything is impermanent. By seeing the empty nature of phenomena, we understand that fulfillment cannot be fixed outside of ourselves. This insight dissolves the grip of craving, allowing us to enjoy life fully without becoming enslaved to a dot in daily practice. Emptiness is observed in the small things. Notice a cup of tea. It has a shape, a taste, a warmth, but it is dependent on leaves, water, heat, and a vessel. Remove any of these conditions, and the experience changes. Notice a conversation with a friend. The words, tone, and context all arise from conditions: mood, past interactions, environment. Recognize that these moments, though real, are not fixed, not permanent, not inherently yours to control. This perspective brings both lightness and clarity. Emptiness fosters compassion. When we see that others are also empty, arising due to countless causes, judgment softens. Anger, resentment, and blame diminish. We understand that harmful behavior is conditioned, not inherent. This does not excuse harm, but it opens the heart to skillful response. Compassion, grounded in emptiness, becomes free from expectation and attachment. It is not bound to reward, recognition, or reciprocity. It flows naturally, like water filling a vessel without effort. The body, too, is experienced through emptiness. Physical sensations, pain, pleasure, tension, relaxation arise from conditions. Neurons firing, blood circulating, muscles contracting, environment interacting. By observing sensations as empty, we reduce suffering caused by clinging, resistance, or fear. Pain is still felt, but it is no longer feared as permanent or overwhelming. The body becomes a field for mindfulness rather than a battlefield. Emptiness informs relationships profoundly. Lovers, friends, colleagues. They are processes arising from conditions, not fixed objects. Expectations of permanence, ownership, or control create suffering. By seeing them as empty, we engage more freely. We communicate with clarity, listen with presence, and act with compassion. The bonds we form are not based on possession, but on understanding, care, and mutual growth. Attachment softens, allowing love to flourish without grasping. Mindfulness practice is a powerful tool for realizing emptiness. Sit quietly. Observe the breath. Notice sensations, thoughts, and emotions. See each arise and fade. Notice that they are dependent on causes and conditions. They are not solid, permanent, or inherently yours. Repeat this observation throughout the day, in movement, in speech, in interaction. Over time, awareness of emptiness deepens, and habitual clinging loses its hold. Emptiness also transforms suffering at its root. Consider grief. Grief feels overwhelming because we perceive the loss as permanent, fixed, and threatening to our sense of self. By seeing that all phenomena are empty, we recognize that grief, too, arises due to conditions: attachment, memory, expectation, and impermanence. It is real, yet not inherently fixed. The pain can be met with compassion, allowing us to grieve fully without being consumed by despair. Ethical conduct is enhanced by emptiness. Since we recognize the interdependent, conditioned nature of reality, we understand that our actions ripple outward. Harsh words, careless deeds, and selfish actions create suffering, not only for others, but for ourselves, as they generate further conditions of fear, guilt, and regret. Acts of kindness, generosity, and patience create conditions for harmony and well-being. Emptiness is the foundation for skillful, mindful, and compassionate living. Even joy is experienced differently through emptiness. Happiness does not depend on permanent objects or outcomes. A smile, a song, a moment in nature, these are ephemeral, arising due to conditions. By seeing them as empty, we enjoy them fully, without clinging. Joy flows naturally, unburdened by expectation. Life becomes a dance of presence, not a struggle to hold or possess. Emptiness integrates all previous teachings. Stress, craving, relationships, anxiety, inner nonviolence, inner child healing, and dependent origination all converge. Each is seen through the lens of emptiness. Stress arises from attachment to fixed outcomes. Craving arises from misunderstanding permanence. Relationships thrive when we see others as processes. Anxiety softens when we see experiences as transient. Inner violence dissolves when we recognize thoughts as empty. The inner child heals when we offer unconditional presence. Dependent origination reveals the web of causes behind all phenomena. Emptiness is the culmination, the insight that unites understanding and practice into freedom. Yet emptiness is not merely conceptual. It must be embodied. Observe daily life through the lens of emptiness. The sensations of walking, the sounds around you, the expressions of people you meet. Notice how each arises due to conditions and passes. Notice how thoughts and emotions are impermanent. Notice how clinging and aversion arise and fade. Through this observation, insight deepens. Wisdom and compassion grow naturally. Meditation on emptiness often reveals paradoxical freedom. The mind anticipates loss change, and uncertainty. The heart fears vulnerability. Yet when we see that nothing is inherently fixed, fear loses its sharpness. The mind is no longer imprisoned by the illusion of permanence. Awareness expands. Freedom arises. Peace emerges not from acquiring stability, but from embracing impermanence and interdependence. This understanding also guides action. When we act, we see that outcomes are conditioned, influenced by many factors. We act not in grasping or aversion, but with skillful awareness. Success and failure are understood as part of the natural flow. Gratitude arises for conditions that allow growth. Compassion arises naturally for conditions that produce suffering. Emptiness provides the clarity and freedom to act wisely and kindly in the world. Finally, emptiness invites us to see the self itself as fluid. The I that we cling to is not a fixed entity. It is a combination of body, mind, experiences, and conditions. Observing this, we release rigid identification, softening self-judgment, fear, and craving. The self becomes a dynamic participant in the web of life, not a fortress to defend. This insight dissolves the root of suffering and opens the door to liberation, presence, and unconditional compassion. And as we integrate the understanding of emptiness into life, the stage is set for the next teaching, the art of enough. Having seen the impermanent, interdependent, and empty nature of all phenomena, we are ready to explore how sufficiency, contentment, and non-attachment create freedom and peace in daily life. Living with the awareness of emptiness transforms everyday life in subtle yet profound ways. Tasks, relationships, and challenges are no longer sources of fear or suffering because we see their transient and conditioned nature. A difficult conversation at work becomes an opportunity to practice presence rather than a threat to identity. A disagreement with a loved one becomes a moment to observe interdependent causes rather than a personal attack. Even routine activities, washing dishes, walking to the store, making tea, can be approached with mindfulness, revealing the impermanent, conditioned, and empty nature of each experience. Consider the experience of failure. In the past, failure may have triggered shame, self-criticism, or despair. But through the lens of emptiness, failure is seen as a conditional phenomenon. It arises due to numerous causes: preparation, circumstance, external factors, and chance. Recognizing this, the mind no longer attaches a fixed identity to failure. I failed is understood as an event, not a verdict on self-worth. The heart softens. Clarity arises. Growth becomes possible. Failure is not annihilation, but an event in the flowing river of experience. The practice of emptiness also transforms joy. Happiness, like suffering, is conditioned and impermanent. By observing its arising and passing, we learn to fully embrace pleasure without clinging. We drink tea not because it will make us permanently content, but because in this moment, its warmth and taste exist. We converse with a friend not to secure lasting satisfaction, but because the shared presence is a gift of the present. Emptiness frees us from grasping, allowing gratitude and delight to flow naturally. Emptiness reshapes our understanding of relationships. Attachment often causes pain as we cling to others as if they were permanent and fixed. We want people to act a certain way, to remain constant, or to fulfill our expectations. The insight into emptiness shows that each person is a dynamic, conditioned process. They arise from countless causes and conditions. By recognizing this, attachment softens and compassion deepens. We learn to love others freely, without trying to hold or control, without making their behavior a measure of our worth. Self-compassion is enhanced by emptiness. The harsh inner critic often treats thoughts, emotions, or mistakes as fixed evidence of inadequacy. Seeing the empty nature of these phenomena, we recognize that they are transient, dependent on conditions, and not inherently defining. We begin to treat ourselves with the same kindness we would offer a friend, understanding that suffering is a process, not a permanent identity. In practical life, mindfulness supports the integration of emptiness. Observe the body. Notice sensations, pain, comfort, tension, relaxation arising and passing. Observe thoughts and emotions. Notice how they emerge due to conditions and dissolve with changing circumstances. Each observation strengthens insight into emptiness. Repetition of this practice gradually rewires habitual responses, allowing a gentle, responsive, and compassionate presence to arise naturally. Emptiness also enhances ethical conduct. Recognizing that all actions are interdependent, we see that harm and kindness ripple through the web of life. Harsh words, selfish deeds, and careless decisions generate suffering for ourselves and others. Conversely, acts of compassion, generosity, and patience create conditions for well-being. With awareness of emptiness, our choices become more thoughtful, intentional, and skillful. Each action is understood as a cause contributing to a network of outcomes, both visible and subtle. The understanding of emptiness strengthens resilience. Life will continue to present challenges, loss, illness, disappointment, and conflict. Yet by seeing these phenomena as empty, arising from conditions, and passing naturally, the mind is less caught in fear or resistance. We meet difficulty with clarity and calm. We respond skillfully rather than react impulsively. The heart remains open, the mind steady, and awareness intact. Meditation deepens this insight. Sitting quietly, observe thoughts, emotions, and bodily sensations as they arise and pass. Do not try to suppress or cling. Notice their conditioned nature. Observe that they are not inherently you, not permanent, not independent. With consistent practice, the mind begins to recognize the fluid, interconnected, and empty nature of all experience. Insight deepens, and suffering is naturally reduced. Emptiness also cultivates humility and gratitude. Since all phenomena are interdependent, our achievements, joys, and comforts arise not solely from our efforts, but from countless conditions, support from others, natural circumstances, and the unfolding of life itself. This recognition softens pride and self-centeredness. Gratitude naturally emerges for the network of causes that make life possible. Each moment is appreciated, not as possession, but as a gift arising in dependence on countless conditions. Furthermore, emptiness informs our understanding of impermanence. Every moment, every interaction, every thought and feeling is transient. By observing this, attachment to permanence dissolves. Clinging to outcomes, people, or possessions loosens. Fear of loss diminishes. Anxiety is tempered. We engage fully in life without the need to control or possess, resting in awareness and acceptance of the natural flow. Emptiness prepares the mind for the next teaching, the art of enough. Once we see that all things are impermanent, interdependent, and empty, we recognize that clinging to more wealth, more recognition, or security is an illusion. True contentment arises from sufficiency, from recognizing the transient and conditioned nature of phenomena, and from releasing the desire to possess or control. The practice of enough becomes a natural extension of the insight into emptiness. In this way, emptiness unites the previous teachings. Stress is softened because experiences are seen as temporary and conditioned. Craving diminishes because attachment to fixed outcomes loses its power. Relationships thrive as others are seen as processes rather than possessions. Anxiety is calmed because the mind sees that events and emotions are not permanent. Inner non-violence deepens as thoughts and feelings are recognized as empty. Healing the inner child integrates because past and present are conditioned phenomena. Dependent origination provides the causal map, and emptiness provides the liberating vision. With the insight of emptiness, we are prepared to embrace the simplicity of enough. We no longer need to chase endlessly, grasp desperately, or resist the natural flow of life. We begin to see sufficiency, presence, and freedom arising from understanding the true nature of reality. And so, the next chapter naturally unfolds: how to cultivate contentment, let go of craving, and live with the art of enough, both materially and spiritually. Having integrated the insights of emptiness, we can now explore practical wisdom for living a life of sufficiency, balance, and grace. The art of enough is simple, yet profoundly challenging. From childhood, many of us are taught to want more possessions, more recognition, more security, more experiences. Culture and media constantly reinforce this message, whispering that happiness lies just beyond the next acquisition, the next achievement, the next milestone. We chase endlessly, believing that fulfillment is somewhere out there, waiting for us to claim it. And yet, the more we grasp, the tighter the chains of craving become. The art of enough asks us to pause, to observe, and to recognize sufficiency in the present moment. Craving is not inherently wrong. Desire is natural and necessary. It drives growth, creativity, and survival. What creates suffering is attachment, the belief that happiness is dependent on acquiring or holding on to something permanently. We mistake impermanent things for sources of lasting fulfillment. A promotion may bring pride for a moment. A new car may delight briefly. A relationship may comfort temporarily. Yet without recognizing their transient nature, we continually reach for the next thing, as if the last could never satisfy. The Buddha taught that liberation comes not from denying desire, but from seeing it clearly and letting go of attachment. Desire can exist without clinging. We can appreciate beauty, enjoy comfort, and strive for improvement, while maintaining awareness that these experiences are impermanent, conditioned, and empty of inherent essence. This distinction is crucial. Wanting and craving are different. Wanting can be engaged with mindfulness. Craving binds. Let us consider a simple example. Imagine a cup of water on a table. You are thirsty. You drink. The water quenches you for a moment. If you cling to the cup as if it could provide permanent satisfaction, you are trapped. If you drink mindfully, appreciating its qualities, acknowledging its impermanence, and letting it go after consumption, you experience sufficiency. The satisfaction of the moment is enough. This principle applies to all experiences. Contentment arises from the recognition of impermanence and emptiness. When we see that nothing is fixed, nothing is permanent, nothing can ultimately satisfy permanently, we stop grasping. Sufficiency becomes not an external condition, but an internal state. We begin to recognize that we already possess what we truly need: awareness, breath, presence, and the capacity for compassion. These are the unshakable sources of fulfillment. The practice of mindfulness strengthens this insight. By observing thoughts, emotions, and bodily sensations, we notice the arising of craving. We see the mind reaching for more, clinging, comparing, desiring. We pause, we breathe, we observe without judgment. The craving is acknowledged, not indulged. The mind begins to recognize the distinction between natural desire and harmful attachment. Over time, this recognition weakens the automatic pull of craving. Generosity is another powerful practice in cultivating the art of enough. Giving time, resources, attention, care reminds us that abundance is not limited to possession. When we share, we experience sufficiency as a living, flowing quality. A person who gives a small gift with full attention often feels richer than one who hoards immense wealth out of fear. Generosity transforms the mind from scarcity to sufficiency, from grasping to freedom. Consider the metaphor of a hand holding water. If you clutch too tightly, the water slips away. If you release it with intention, it flows freely, nourishing others while remaining in the stream of life. Craving is the clenched hand. Generosity, mindfulness, and the recognition of impermanence are the act of opening, allowing life to move without grasping. The art of enough also involves gratitude. Gratitude shifts attention from what is lacking to what is present. Each morning, noticing 3 things we have rather than 3 things we lack rewires the mind. Perhaps it is the warmth of sunlight, the presence of loved ones, or the breath that fills the lungs. These simple acknowledgments cultivate sufficiency. They remind the heart that we are already part of the unfolding abundance of life. Contentment is further deepened by non-comparison. Many forms of craving arise from comparing ourselves to others. The neighbor's car, the friend's promotion, the colleague's recognition. This comparison perpetuates a sense of insufficiency. Seeing that each life is shaped by unique causes and conditions, and that fulfillment does not reside in accumulation or status, frees us from endless comparison. Our sense of enough becomes internal rather than external. Craving and attachment are often fueled by fear. Fear of loss, fear of inadequacy, fear of not having enough. By observing these fears through mindfulness, we begin to dismantle their power. Fear is recognized as arising from conditions, past experiences, social conditioning, bodily responses, not as a fixed truth. Awareness softens fear. Compassion comforts. Clarity guides. In this way, the art of enough is practiced moment by moment, choice by choice. Simplicity enhances sufficiency. In a world overflowing with options, we often complicate life unnecessarily. By simplifying possessions, routines, and commitments, we reduce the stimuli that fuel craving. Minimalism is not about deprivation. It is about creating space to recognize and enjoy what is already sufficient. The mind is less distracted, the heart more open, and the experience of each moment richer. The practice of enough extends to relationships. We stop clinging to others to fulfill unmet needs. We engage with presence and care without demanding constant reassurance, attention, or validation. We appreciate the fleeting, conditioned nature of connection. Love is experienced as a shared process, not as a permanent possession. This understanding dissolves jealousy, insecurity, and codependence, creating space for genuine compassion and joy. Inner nonviolence integrates naturally with the art of enough. When we stop judging ourselves harshly for wanting, failing, or experiencing loss, sufficiency emerges. We treat ourselves with kindness and patience. We recognize that imperfection is natural and transient. We no longer measure self-worth by acquisition, performance, or control. The heart softens. Anxiety eases. Peace arises. Even in adversity, the art of enough can be applied. When resources are limited, health falters, or opportunities fail, we find that awareness, compassion, and mindfulness are always available. These internal qualities are sufficient for life. We may act to improve conditions, but we do not cling desperately to outcomes. The difference between sufficiency and craving becomes palpable. One brings peace, the other perpetuates suffering. The art of enough is not passive. It involves active engagement with life, guided by awareness. We act, we create, we connect, but with understanding of impermanence, emptiness, and interdependence. We respond skillfully to conditions without being enslaved by them. Life is experienced fully, without grasping or resisting. Satisfaction arises not from accumulation, but from the recognition of what is already sufficient in the present moment. In summary, letting go of craving and attachment is a practice rooted in insight. By understanding impermanence, dependent origination, and emptiness, we weaken the mind's compulsion to grasp. By cultivating mindfulness, generosity, gratitude, and simplicity, we embody sufficiency. By treating ourselves and others with compassion, we dissolve the sources of inner conflict. The art of enough is the culmination of previous teachings, offering practical freedom in daily life. And as we master the art of enough, the stage is set for the final teaching, the integration of all insights into daily living, cultivating presence, compassion, balance, and awakening in every aspect of life. The journey moves from understanding to embodiment, from wisdom to practice, from liberation in principle to freedom in lived experience. As we practice the art of enough, we begin to notice the subtle ways in which craving and attachment shape daily life. Many of our decisions, actions, and thoughts are influenced not by genuine need, but by the compulsion to accumulate, compare, or control. A pause, even a brief one, allows awareness to intervene. Before reaching for another purchase, another task, another expectation, we ask, do I need this, or is my mind chasing fulfillment through craving? This question, repeated over time, becomes a powerful tool for liberation. The act of choosing sufficiency over craving is not always easy. Old habits, cultural conditioning, and social pressure reinforce the illusion that more equals happiness. Yet each conscious choice to embrace enough weakens the grip of attachment. It builds resilience against anxiety, impatience, and dissatisfaction. Even small decisions, savoring one meal instead of overeating, appreciating one moment instead of rushing to the next, strengthen the inner capacity for contentment. Simplicity is a practical ally in this process. Simplifying routines, decluttering spaces, and reducing unnecessary obligations create room for the mind to settle. When life is less cluttered, the compulsion to chase external sources of satisfaction diminishes. Space is created not only physically, but mentally and emotionally. In this space, sufficiency is recognized naturally. The mind learns to rest without grasping. The heart learns to trust without clinging. Generosity is another cornerstone of sufficiency. Giving is a direct antidote to craving because it reinforces the understanding that abundance is not solely about possession. Sharing time, resources, or attention reminds us that the well-being of others and our own well-being are interconnected. As generosity becomes habitual, the attachment to more naturally softens. We begin to see that the richness of life is found not in accumulation, but in flowing participation, care, and connection. Gratitude, too, is central. A simple practice naming 3 things we already have each day can shift perception profoundly. Gratitude highlights the abundance inherent in the present moment, countering the mind's habit of focusing on lack. A warm cup of tea, the sunlight on our skin, a conversation with a friend, these ordinary experiences become sources of contentment when observed through the lens of sufficiency. We learn that happiness is not out there, waiting to be captured. It is here, in the appreciation of what already exists. Relationships benefit deeply from the art of enough. Many conflicts arise from attachment, wanting others to behave in certain ways, to meet our expectations, or to validate our self-worth. By practicing sufficiency, we approach relationships with openness rather than control. We recognize others as dynamic beings, shaped by conditions, not fixed objects to possess or mold. Love and care flow freely when we are not tethered to outcomes. Compassion replaces judgment, presence replaces anxiety, and joy replaces grasping. Letting go of craving also transforms the inner dialogue. The critical voice that constantly pushes for more achievement, more validation, more perfection, begins to soften. We respond with kindness and clarity rather than harshness. Awareness allows us to see when the mind is trapped in comparison or desire, and to consciously redirect attention to sufficiency. Self-judgment diminishes as we recognize that happiness does not reside in achieving everything, but in fully experiencing and appreciating the present. Even in challenging circumstances, the art of enough offers resilience. Financial constraints, health issues, or social pressures can trigger fear and craving. Yet when we practice sufficiency, we discover that our basic needs presence, awareness, breath, and the capacity for care remain intact. These internal resources are always available, independent of external conditions. In cultivating enough, we learn to act skillfully without desperation, to meet challenges with clarity, and to maintain inner stability amidst external flux. Mindfulness reinforces these insights. By observing each thought, desire, and impulse, we see the arising of craving clearly. We recognize patterns, a habitual reach for pleasure, avoidance of discomfort, clinging to outcomes. In this observation, the mind becomes a witness rather than a participant in old patterns. Awareness creates a pause, a space in which choice replaces compulsion. Each mindful moment is a training ground for sufficiency. The art of enough is not passive. It requires active discernment and engagement. We act, create, connect, and respond, but without attachment to fixed results. We strive for excellence without clinging to outcomes. We pursue goals without identifying our self-worth with achievement. We invest in relationships without expecting constant affirmation. The freedom of enough allows action without anxiety, effort without obsession, and presence without grasping. Meditation supports the integration of these practices. Sitting quietly, observe the breath, the body, and the mind. Notice thoughts arising and passing. Notice cravings and attachments as transient phenomena. Recognize sufficiency in the present moment. Allow contentment to arise naturally. Over time, this practice deepens, embedding the principle of enough into the nervous system and the heart. Emptiness, dependent origination, mindfulness, generosity, and compassion converge in the practice of enough. We see the interconnected, impermanent nature of all phenomena. We recognize that craving causes suffering and that letting go brings freedom. We cultivate gratitude for what is present. We act skillfully in the world without clinging. The mind becomes lighter, the heart more expansive, and life more vibrant. Integration extends to all areas of life. Financial resources are used wisely, not compulsively. Relationships are approached with care and presence. Work and creativity are undertaken with attention, not desperation. Daily routines become opportunities to practice sufficiency. The art of enough transforms not only internal experience, but also behavior, relationships, and engagement with the world. The journey toward enough is gradual. Old habits of craving, comparison, and attachment may resurface. The mind may resist the practice, insisting that more is necessary, that fulfillment lies elsewhere. Yet through consistent mindfulness, reflection, and action, the patterns of craving weaken. The heart learns to rest in sufficiency. The mind learns to observe without grasping. Each day, each breath, each moment becomes an opportunity to practice and embody the art of enough. Asterisk. Even material possessions are approached differently. Instead of accumulating for status, security, or comparison, items are valued for use, purpose, and enjoyment. Clutter is reduced, unnecessary purchases are avoided, and simplicity is embraced. This does not imply austerity or deprivation. It implies clarity, intentionality, and freedom from the compulsive need for more. We begin to see that life itself, with all its impermanence, is enough. The art of enough also fosters inner peace. By letting go of attachment, we reduce internal conflict. Anxiety diminishes as we stop chasing elusive fulfillment. Anger and resentment soften as we no longer demand permanence from impermanent conditions. Joy and appreciation arise naturally, flowing from the recognition that each moment is complete in itself. The heart rests. The mind settles. Life is experienced fully. In this practice, we embody the culmination of previous teachings. Awareness of emptiness allows recognition of impermanence. Understanding dependent origination illuminates the causes of craving and attachment. Healing the inner child nurtures sufficiency at the core. Inner nonviolence fosters kindness towards self and others. Mindfulness anchors the present. Generosity and gratitude reinforce abundance without grasping. Together, these insights create a life of freedom, balance, and contentment. The art of enough is ultimately the liberation of the heart. By letting go of craving, comparison, and attachment, we discover that happiness does not depend on external accumulation. Fulfillment is found in awareness, presence, and the appreciation of what is. We realize that we have always possessed the essential elements of well-being: clarity, compassion, breath, and consciousness. The mind can rest. The heart can open. Life can be fully lived. And with this foundation, we are prepared for the final chapter, integration into daily living. How do we weave together the teachings of stress, craving, relationships, anxiety, inner nonviolence, inner child healing, dependent origination, emptiness, and the art of enough into a seamless, practical, and transformative approach to life? How do we live fully awake, present, and compassionate in every moment? The final part will bring these threads together, offering guidance for embodiment and the daily practice of freedom. Integration is the culmination of understanding. All the insights we have explored: stress, money and desire, relationships, anxiety, inner nonviolence, healing the inner child, dependent origination, emptiness, and the art of enough are not meant to remain as concepts. They are tools, maps, and guides for living fully awake. The challenge is to weave them together into a seamless practice, one that transforms thought, emotion, and action into clarity, compassion, and presence. This is the essence of daily integration. Life presents constant opportunities for practice. Each morning offers a choice: to wake with awareness or drift into habit. Each interaction, whether with a colleague, family member, friend, or stranger, invites skillful engagement. Each thought and emotion provides an opportunity to observe, understand, and respond with insight rather than reactivity. Integration is the art of turning every moment into a classroom, every experience into a teacher. The first step in integration is mindfulness. Mindfulness anchors the practice of all previous teachings. Begin with the body. Notice posture, breath, and sensations. Observe tension, comfort, or restlessness without judgment. The body is the gateway to the present moment. When we inhabit it fully, stress softens, clarity emerges, and the automatic patterns of craving and aversion are interrupted. The breath, steady and attentive, becomes the thread weaving together awareness and action. Next, observe the mind. Thoughts, emotions, and impulses arise continuously. Some are rooted in past trauma or unhealed wounds, others in anticipation of the future. Recognize them without clinging or rejection. Anxiety, fear, desire, or doubt may surface. Observe their arising and passing. Recognize their impermanent, conditioned, and empty nature. Each observation strengthens insight, reducing the power of reactive patterns and fostering calm clarity. Integration also requires intentionality. Life is full of choices, and each choice can reinforce freedom or perpetuate suffering. Ethical action, guided by compassion and awareness, is the foundation of integration. Consider relationships. Speak with kindness, listen deeply, and respond with care. Observe cravings in daily life, whether for material possessions, recognition, or control, and consciously choose sufficiency over grasping. Make generosity, patience, and empathy a default mode of engagement. The practice of inner nonviolence, or ahimsa, is central to integration. Observe moments of self-criticism, impatience, or harsh judgment. Pause. Offer compassion instead. Place a hand on the heart and acknowledge suffering with kindness. Inward violence dissolves when met with awareness and care, and this internal peace naturally extends outward. Interaction with others becomes more skillful as the mind is less entangled in reactivity and the heart more attuned to empathy. Healing the inner child remains an ongoing practice. In moments of fear, insecurity, or self-doubt, pause and attend to the inner child. Provide reassurance, understanding, and presence. Recognize the echo of past wounds and present reactions. This nurturing strengthens resilience, reduces habitual anxiety, and fosters a deep sense of sufficiency. Integration requires that the inner child is not forgotten, but consistently acknowledged and supported. Dependent origination informs every action. Recognize the conditions that shape experiences, both internally and externally. Observe how thoughts, emotions, and circumstances interconnect. Understand that reactions are not random, and that skillful intervention can transform the course of events. Each interaction, each choice, and each response is a node in the vast web of interdependence. Acting with awareness allows us to influence outcomes compassionately and skillfully. Emptiness provides the ultimate freedom in integration. Recognize that all phenomena, thoughts, emotions, relationships, possessions are empty of fixed essence. They arise, persist, and pass due to conditions. By observing this, clinging softens, judgment diminishes, and suffering loosens its grip. Life is experienced not as a series of obstacles to control, but as a flowing process to engage with fully. Awareness of emptiness allows the heart to remain open, even in the midst of challenge. The art of enough completes this synthesis. Practice sufficiency in every moment. Appreciate what is present. Let go of unnecessary craving, comparison, and attachment. Simplicity, gratitude, and generosity are the practical expressions of sufficiency. Whether eating, working, walking, or speaking, notice the fullness of the present moment. Recognize that happiness is not found in accumulation or control, but in presence, awareness, and compassionate engagement with life. Daily life becomes the canvas for integration. Stressful mornings become opportunities to anchor in breath and presence. Financial decisions become mindful choices, balancing needs and sufficiency. Relationships, whether harmonious or challenging, become opportunities to practice compassion, listening, and non-attachment. Even moments of discomfort or conflict become training grounds for patience, clarity, and equanimity. Every aspect of life, from the ordinary to the extraordinary, is transformed into practice. Integration is not a one-time achievement, but a continuous process. Patterns of craving, attachment, fear, or reactivity may resurface. The mind may slip into habitual thought, and the heart may tighten under stress. Yet with mindfulness, compassion, and awareness, we notice these patterns early, intervene skillfully, and return to the present. Integration is less about perfection and more about consistent attention, repeated observation, and gentle guidance of the mind and heart. Meditation remains a cornerstone of integration. A brief daily practice sitting quietly, observing the breath, noticing thoughts and emotions, and grounding in presence anchors the mind. Even a few minutes of mindful observation strengthens awareness, softens craving, and cultivates compassion. The practice is both a refuge and a laboratory, where insight is tested, strengthened, and embodied. Integration also involves reflection. At the end of each day, review actions, choices, and reactions. Notice moments of clarity, kindness, and presence, as well as moments of attachment, craving, or reactivity. Observe without judgment. Reflect with curiosity and compassion. Each review reinforces learning, strengthens insight, and deepens embodiment of the teachings. The body is not separate from integration. Movement, posture, and physical care influence mind and heart. Walking meditation, gentle exercise, mindful eating, and adequate rest are practices of awareness and compassion. The body becomes both a vessel and a teacher, providing constant feedback on the state of mind and heart. Integration is holistic, encompassing body, mind, and spirit. Integration extends to community and the world. Awareness of dependent origination, emptiness, and sufficiency informs social engagement. Acts of generosity, service, and compassion ripple through the web of interdependence. Ethical living, grounded in mindfulness and wisdom, reduces harm and increases well-being, both for self and others. Daily practice is thus both personal and relational, affecting not only our inner experience, but also the world we touch. Consistency is key. Integration is strengthened through repeated attention to the present moment. Mindfulness anchors awareness. Compassion softens the heart. Insight guides action. Generosity and gratitude cultivate sufficiency. Over time, these practices become second nature, forming a foundation of presence and wisdom that permeates every aspect of life. Integration also requires flexibility. Life is unpredictable, and circumstances change. Practices may need to adapt to new challenges, environments, and responsibilities. Flexibility, grounded in awareness and compassion, allows the teachings to be applied skillfully. The essence of integration is not rigidity, but responsiveness, engaging life fully while remaining anchored in insight. In practical terms, integration can be approached through daily routines. Begin the day with mindfulness, reflection, and intention. Move through activities with attention, noticing each thought, emotion, and action. Pause throughout the day to reconnect with breath and presence. Engage in relationships with compassion, non-attachment, and generosity. End the day with review, gratitude, and reflection. Each step reinforces integration, transforming understanding into lived experience. Integration is the embodiment of freedom. Stress is met with clarity. Craving is met with awareness. Relationships are met with compassion. Anxiety is met with calm. The inner child is met with care. Awareness of dependent origination guides choices. Emptiness softens clinging. Sufficiency allows contentment. Together, these practices create a life that is awake, balanced, and liberated. The final aim of integration is not perfection, but presence. To be fully alive in each moment, fully aware, fully compassionate, and fully engaged. To navigate life's challenges with skill. To experience joy and sorrow without clinging or aversion. And to cultivate a heart that is steady, generous, and open. Daily practice transforms ordinary life into the path itself, where insight, wisdom, and compassion are expressed moment by moment. Through integration, the teachings of the Buddha become lived reality. The stress of modern life is softened. Craving and attachment are recognized and skillfully released. Relationships flourish through awareness, compassion, and non-attachment. Anxiety is met with calm presence. The inner child is nurtured and healed. The interdependent and empty nature of existence is embodied. Sufficiency becomes the foundation for daily living. Life becomes a practice, and practice becomes life. The integration of these teachings is not a destination, but a journey. Each day provides new opportunities to embody presence, awareness, and compassion. Life's challenges, the unexpected conflicts, losses, or disappointments become invitations to apply the lessons of mindfulness, sufficiency, and non-attachment. Rather than being pulled into habitual stress or craving, we respond with clarity, guided by awareness of causes, impermanence, and emptiness. The ordinary becomes sacred, and the mundane becomes a practice in itself. Even routine moments can transform into practice. Washing dishes is no longer a chore, but an opportunity to observe the sensations, the water flowing, the movements of the hands. Walking to a store becomes a meditation, noticing each step, the breath, the sounds, the life surrounding you. Conversations with others are approached with full presence, listening deeply, responding with care, and practicing generosity of heart. Through these small, deliberate acts, integration becomes continuous, subtle, and profound. Stress, once a dominating force, is softened by mindfulness and self-awareness. When deadlines, responsibilities, or external pressures arise, we pause, breathe, and observe our reactions. The nervous system is no longer on automatic high alert. Awareness creates space between stimulus and response. We respond skillfully rather than react habitually. We recognize that stress is not inherently oppressive, but conditioned arising from perception, expectation, and attachment. Through mindful observation, it can be transformed into clarity, focus, and energy. Craving and attachment, central sources of suffering, are gently loosened through integration. We recognize that external possessions, achievements, or relationships cannot provide permanent satisfaction. We cultivate sufficiency in the present moment, acknowledging that what we already have, awareness, breath, consciousness, and the capacity for compassion, is enough. This recognition dissolves the constant chase for more, allowing the heart to rest. Life becomes lived fully, without the compulsion to accumulate or control. Relationships are transformed through the practice of awareness, compassion, and non-attachment. We approach others as dynamic, conditioned beings rather than fixed objects. We listen deeply, respond with care, and release the expectation that they fulfill our desires. Conflicts are seen as opportunities for understanding rather than battles to win. Affection and love are experienced freely, without grasping or possessiveness. The quality of connection deepens, rooted in presence, empathy, and mutual respect. Inner nonviolence remains essential in integration. We meet ourselves with compassion, softening self-criticism, judgment, and guilt. When errors occur, we respond with understanding rather than punishment. We acknowledge suffering without being consumed by it, providing care to our own mind and heart. This inner harmony naturally extends outward, shaping interactions with others and creating a foundation for peace in daily life. Healing the inner child is continuously nurtured through integration. Whenever fear, insecurity, or old wounds surface, we pause to acknowledge, comfort, and reassure the inner child. This practice strengthens resilience, supports emotional balance, and fosters a sense of sufficiency. By maintaining this internal dialogue, the adult self becomes grounded, compassionate, and flexible. Past trauma or neglect no longer dictates present experience. It is transformed through understanding and care. The awareness of dependent origination informs each action and decision. We recognize that every thought, word, and deed arises due to interdependent causes and creates consequences. Understanding this, we act intentionally, ethically, and skillfully. Even small actions ripple outward, influencing the world in subtle yet meaningful ways. The web of interconnection encourages responsibility without fear, kindness without attachment, and generosity without expectation. Emptiness deepens the freedom cultivated through integration. We see that thoughts, emotions, sensations, and experiences are transient, conditioned, and empty of fixed essence. Clinging loses its power. Fear, jealousy, and anxiety soften. Awareness and compassion become natural responses. Life is engaged with fully, not as a series of possessions or outcomes to secure, but as a flowing process to be observed, experienced, and participated in consciously. The art of enough completes the circle. Sufficiency is embodied in each moment. Gratitude for what is present deepens. The mind no longer chases endlessly, and the heart rests. Simplicity, generosity, and mindful presence reinforce sufficiency. Even in scarcity, awareness, compassion, and the capacity to engage with life fully provide abundance. Craving loses its power, and contentment emerges naturally. Integration in daily life also involves rituals and reminders. Morning mindfulness, reflective journaling, intentional pauses during the day, and evening review can anchor the teachings in lived experience. Physical care, mindful eating, gentle exercise, and restorative rest supports mental clarity and emotional balance. Relationships and community engagement offer opportunities for generosity, compassion, and ethical action. Each aspect of life becomes a practice, reinforcing integration continuously. Flexibility and patience are vital. Life is unpredictable, and patterns of craving, stress, or reactivity may arise unexpectedly. Integration is not about eliminating challenges, but about responding skillfully when they occur. Awareness, compassion, and insight guide the response. Old habits are met with curiosity, mistakes are treated with care, and moments of clarity are deepened through reflection. Integration is both practice and journey, never a static achievement. Meditation serves as both anchor and laboratory. Regular sitting, walking, or mindful movement strengthens observation, deepens insight, and reinforces compassion. Meditation is not separate from life. It informs each thought, action, and interaction. Through repeated practice, the mind develops clarity, the heart expands, and the body learns presence. Integration becomes embodied, seamless, and continuous. The culmination of integration is the embodiment of freedom. Stress is met with calm clarity. Craving is met with sufficiency. Relationships are met with compassion and non-attachment. Anxiety is met with awareness. Inner conflict dissolves into balance. The heart rests. Life is experienced fully with awareness, empathy, and skillful action. Integration is both the means and the manifestation of awakening in daily life. As integration deepens, the ordinary and extraordinary are no longer separate. Each breath, each action, each moment is both practice and realization. Walking to the store, preparing a meal, conversing with a friend, or facing difficulty, all are opportunities to embody the teachings. The mundane becomes sacred. Life itself becomes the path. Presence, clarity, and compassion are expressed moment by moment naturally, without effort or pretense. The journey of integration also cultivates humility and gratitude. Recognizing the interdependent, conditioned, and empty nature of all phenomena, we see that life is a gift. Every moment is a product of countless causes, conditions, and contributions. This awareness fosters appreciation, softens pride, and deepens connection to others. Gratitude becomes not a practice, but a natural orientation of the heart. Final aim of integration is living fully awake. Awareness, compassion, and wisdom are no longer abstract principles, but practical, lived realities. The teachings of the Buddhist stress management, understanding desire, cultivating healthy relationships, addressing anxiety, practicing inner nonviolence, healing the inner child, seeing dependent origination, embodying emptiness, and embracing sufficiency converge into an integrated way of being. Life is experienced fully, not as a series of challenges to endure, but as a continuous opportunity for presence, freedom, and compassion. This integration is accessible to everyone. It does not require extraordinary circumstances or radical change. It begins with attention, noticing the breath, observing thoughts, responding with kindness, and recognizing sufficiency. Over time, these moments accumulate, forming a stable foundation of awareness and balance. The ordinary becomes extraordinary through the consistent practice of integration. Daily integration also prepares the mind for the future. Challenges will continue to arise. Loss, illness, conflict, and uncertainty are part of life. Yet with integration, we navigate these experiences with skill, presence, and wisdom. The mind is not overwhelmed by craving or fear. The heart is not closed by attachment or resentment. Awareness and compassion guide the response. Life becomes both manageable and meaningful. Ultimately, integration is the embodiment of liberation. Stress no longer dominates. Craving no longer enslaves. Relationships flourish. Anxiety is softened. Inner violence is reduced. The inner child is nurtured. Interdependence is understood. Emptiness is realized. And sufficiency is embodied. Daily life itself becomes the path of awakening. Presence, wisdom, and compassion are expressed continuously, moment by moment, in every action, thought, and word. The culmination of this journey is hope and freedom. The teachings are not abstract theories, but practical tools. Through consistent attention, reflection, and practice, the mind becomes clear, the heart opens, and life is experienced fully. Challenges are met with skill. Joy is embraced without grasping. Pain is acknowledged without fear. Life flows, not as a problem to solve, but as a continuous field of practice, learning and awakening. And now, having explored all 10 parts, the journey comes full circle. Each insight, each practice, each moment of awareness contributes to a life lived with presence, clarity, and compassion. The teachings are embodied. The path is walked. The mind is free. The heart is open. The journey of integration transforms ordinary experience into continuous practice, and ordinary life into a living expression of awakening. This is the essence of the teaching. Life itself is the practice. Every breath, every thought, every action is an opportunity to awaken. Stress, craving, relationships, anxiety, inner nonviolence, inner child healing, dependent origination, emptiness, and the art of enough converge in each moment. Awareness, compassion, and wisdom are expressed continuously. The ordinary tapa form